Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we're diving deep into the shadowy corners of the human heart, exploring the unsettling truths that often underpin our most cherished emotion, love. This isn't about romantic ideals or fairy tales. It's about the raw, often uncomfortable psychological realities that shape our connections, our desires, and our deepest vulnerabilities. Prepare to look at love through a different lens, one that might just disturb you, but ultimately enlighten you. Let's peel back the layers and confront some disturbing psychological facts about love. 1. People project their emotional needs onto partners. It's a phenomenon so pervasive, so deeply ingrained in the fabric of human connection that most of us are entirely unaware it's happening. We enter relationships, often with the best intentions, carrying a silent, invisible baggage of unmet emotional needs from our past. These aren't just simple desires, they are profound yearnings, voids left by childhood experiences, past hurts, or even just the inherent incompleteness of the human condition. And without conscious awareness, we subtly but powerfully project these needs onto our partners, implicitly expecting them to fill the gaps we ourselves haven't yet addressed. This isn't a conscious demand, but rather an unconscious assignment of responsibility, a silent mandate for our loved one to become the missing piece of our psychological puzzle. Consider the person who grew up feeling unseen or unheard. Their deep-seated emotional need is for validation, for someone to truly acknowledge their presence and their worth. When they enter a relationship, they might unconsciously seek out a partner who is a diligent listener, someone who offers constant praise, or someone who makes them feel incredibly special. If the partner, being a distinct individual with their own needs and personality, fails to consistently meet this projected demand, the person might experience profound disappointment, feeling neglected or unloved, even if their partner is genuinely caring in their own way. The projection creates a discrepancy. The partner is not failing to love, but failing to fulfill a specific, often unspoken internal requirement that was never truly theirs to meet in the first place. This can lead to a cycle of frustration, where one person feels constantly misunderstood and the other feels perpetually inadequate, forever chasing an elusive target. Similarly, someone who harbors deep-seated fears of abandonment, perhaps stemming from an inconsistent parental figure or a traumatic past breakup, might project an intense need for constant reassurance onto their partner. Every slight delay in a text message, every moment of independent activity, might be unconsciously interpreted through the lens of potential desertion. They might expect their partner to be perpetually available, to prioritize them above all else, to offer unwavering declarations of commitment. The partner, simply living their life, maintaining their friendships, or pursuing their own interests, might find themselves under an immense, unarticulated pressure to constantly prove their devotion. This isn't about healthy interdependence. It's about an unconscious demand for the partner to serve as a psychological fortress against an internal fear. The partner becomes a substitute for internal security rather than an addition to it. This projection isn't always about past deficits. It can also be about aspirational needs. Someone who deeply desires to be a certain kind of person, more confident, more adventurous, more successful, might find themselves drawn to a partner who embodies those very qualities. They then unconsciously project the responsibility for their own growth onto their partner, expecting their loved one to somehow make them more confident, adventurous, or successful. The partner isn't just loved for who they are, but for what they represent, for the potential they hold to complete a personal narrative. This can be incredibly burdensome, as the partner is then expected to not only be themselves, but also to facilitate the other person's unfulfilled self-actualization. When the internal work isn't done, the external relationship becomes a surrogate battlefield for internal struggles. The insidious nature of projection lies in its unconscious operation. We genuinely believe these needs are a natural part of a healthy relationship, failing to recognize their deeper origins within ourselves. We might even rationalize our demands, believing our partner is simply not trying hard enough or doesn't understand. This prevents us from taking accountability for our own emotional landscape. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel this intense need for constant validation?" we ask, "Why isn't my partner validating me enough?" The spotlight is always on the other person, obscuring the internal dynamics that are truly at play. The consequences of this pervasive projection are manifold and often damaging. Firstly, it places an unfair and impossible burden on our partners. No single individual can be everything to another person, nor should they be expected to. When a partner is tasked with fulfilling an entire backlog of unmet emotional needs, they inevitably fall short, leading to feelings of inadequacy, resentment, and exhaustion. Secondly, it stunts our own emotional growth. As long as we rely on external sources to fill internal voids, we never develop the self-sufficiency and resilience needed to address those needs ourselves. We remain emotionally dependent, perpetually seeking validation, security, or completion from outside ourselves, rather than cultivating it within. Moreover, projection can distort our perception of our partners. We see them not as they truly are, but as reflections of our own desires and fears. Their actions are interpreted through the filter of our projected needs, often leading to misunderstandings and misinterpretations. A partner's silence might be indifference, when it's simply a moment of quiet contemplation. A partner's independent activity might be seen as a lack of commitment, when it's simply healthy autonomy. The relationship becomes less about genuine connection between two whole individuals and more about a symbiotic dynamic where one person is constantly extracting something from the other. Breaking free from the cycle of projection requires profound self-awareness and a willingness to confront our own internal landscape. It means pausing to ask ourselves, is this feeling truly about my partner's actions, or is it echoing a deeper, older, unmet need within me? It means taking responsibility for our emotional well-being, understanding that while a partner can certainly contribute to our happiness, they cannot be the sole architects of it. It means recognizing that the most fulfilling relationships are those where two individuals, having largely addressed their own emotional foundations, come together not to complete each other, but to complement and enhance each other's all-rich lives. Until we acknowledge the silent demands we place on our partners, we risk building relationships on a foundation of unaddressed personal history, rather than on the solid ground of mutual understanding and genuine acceptance. The disturbing truth is that many of us are not truly seeing our partners, but rather a canvas onto which we paint our own unfulfilled desires, trapping both ourselves and them in a cycle of expectation and disappointment. 2. Humans overestimate how much partners understand them. There's a curious psychological bias that permeates our closest relationships, particularly romantic ones: the illusion of profound understanding. We hold a deeply ingrained belief that because we share intimate moments, vulnerable confessions, and countless hours with our partners, they must possess an almost telepathic insight into our inner workings. We assume that our unspoken thoughts, our subtle emotional shifts, our deepest motivations are transparently clear to the person we love. This overestimation of shared understanding is not just a benign assumption, it's a profound cognitive distortion that can lead to significant friction, misunderstanding, and a pervasive sense of loneliness within the very connection designed to alleviate it. This belief stems from several psychological roots. Firstly, the very act of choosing a partner often involves a sense of profound resonance, a feeling that they just get me on a fundamental level. This initial spark of recognition can be incredibly powerful, creating an expectation that this intuitive grasp will continue indefinitely, extending to all facets of our being. Secondly, our own internal experience is so immediate and vivid that it's difficult to imagine others don't perceive it with similar clarity. We are constantly aware of our own intentions, our own emotional states, and our own inner narratives. It's a natural, though flawed, leap to assume that someone as close as a romantic partner has access to this same privileged information. We forget that their internal world is as complex and opaque to us as ours is to them. Consider a common scenario. One partner is feeling overwhelmed by work stress, silently stewing over a difficult project or a demanding boss. They might come home, perhaps a little quieter than usual, a bit withdrawn. They expect their partner to immediately intuit the source of their mood, to offer the perfect blend of comfort, space, or practical advice without a single word being spoken. The partner, however, might interpret the silence as disinterest, the withdrawal as annoyance, or simply not notice it amidst their own concerns. When the first partner eventually snaps or expresses frustration, they might do so with an underlying resentment. "Why didn't you know I was struggling? Why didn't you ask? You should have seen it." The expectation wasn't that the partner would react perfectly to an articulated problem, but that they would magically decipher an unarticulated one. This overestimation is particularly potent regarding our emotional needs and desires. We might feel a strong desire for more affection, more quality time, or a specific kind of support. Instead of communicating this directly, we drop subtle hints, make passive-aggressive comments, or simply withdraw, expecting our partner to read between the lines. When these subtle signals go unnoticed or are misinterpreted, as they almost always are, we feel deeply hurt, misunderstood, and betrayed. "If they really loved me, they would know what I need," is the silent, damaging refrain. This belief places an impossible burden on the partner, demanding not just empathy, but clairvoyance. It transforms the relationship into a constant guessing game, where one person is perpetually disappointed and the other is forever bewildered. The curse of knowledge plays a significant role here. As individuals, we possess a vast amount of internal information: our history, our current anxieties, our future hopes, our specific triggers, and the nuanced meanings we attach to various words and actions. We are the sole possessors of this intricate internal landscape. When we communicate, we often assume our partner has a similar background context, a similar mental model through which to interpret our words and behaviors. We forget that they are operating from their own unique internal landscape, with their own history, anxieties, and interpretations. What seems obvious to us, because it's rooted in our own deep understanding of ourselves, is often completely opaque to another. This psychological blind spot is further exacerbated by the intimate nature of romantic relationships. We often feel a profound spiritual or emotional bond, a sense of oneness with our partner. This feeling, while beautiful and essential for connection, can lead us to blur the boundaries between self and other, convincing us that our internal experiences are somehow shared. We forget that even in the deepest intimacy, two distinct consciousnesses remain. Our partner is not a mirror, but a separate, complex individual with their own internal universe. The consequences of this pervasive overestimation are far-reaching. Firstly, it leads to a chronic lack of effective communication. Why explicitly state a need when your partner should already know? Why explain your feelings when they should already understand them? This reliance on unspoken understanding starves the relationship of genuine direct dialogue, creating a vacuum where assumptions fester and resentments build. Partners become frustrated not just by the lack of understanding, but by the other person's perceived unwillingness to communicate clearly. Secondly, it fosters a deep sense of loneliness and isolation. When we believe our partner should understand us without us having to articulate, and they inevitably fail to do so, we are left feeling profoundly alone in our experience. This can lead to a cycle of withdrawal, where we stop trying to communicate because they just won't get it anyway, further solidifying the very lack of understanding we resent. The irony is that the very belief meant to foster connection ends up creating distance. Thirdly, it can lead to unfair judgments and accusations. When our partner doesn't respond to our unstated needs, we might interpret it as a lack of love, indifference, or even malice. They don't care about me. They're being selfish. They deliberately ignored my feelings. These interpretations, born from the illusion of shared understanding, can inflict deep wounds and erode trust, all based on a misattribution of intent. The partner might be genuinely clueless, not uncaring. Overcoming this pervasive bias requires a conscious and consistent effort. It demands a fundamental shift in our approach to communication within relationships. We must cultivate a mindset of explicit articulation rather than implicit expectation. This means assuming ignorance, not insight. When in doubt, assume your partner doesn't know what you're thinking or feeling, and then tell them. Practicing active and empathetic listening. Just as we want to be understood, we must also make a conscious effort to truly understand our partners, asking clarifying questions rather than making assumptions. Owning our feelings. Instead of saying, "you make me feel," try, "I feel when." This shifts the focus from accusation to personal experience, making it easier for a partner to understand without feeling attacked. Recognizing the distinctness of minds. Even after years together, we remain separate individuals. Celebrating this distinctness, rather than trying to merge minds, can foster healthier communication. The disturbing truth is that the person closest to us, the one we share our bed and our deepest secrets with, often understands far less of our internal world than we believe. This isn't a failing of love, but a fundamental limitation of human cognition and communication. Acknowledging this fact, rather than resisting it, is the first step towards building relationships founded on genuine, explicit understanding, rather than on the fragile illusion of telepathy. Only then can we bridge the gap between our internal worlds and truly connect with the separate, beautiful consciousness of our partner. 3. Love fades naturally if not maintained, no matter how strong it feels. There's a pervasive myth woven into the fabric of romantic narratives, a comforting delusion that suggests true love, once found, is an eternal, self-sustaining flame. We are taught to believe that if the connection is real, it will endure effortlessly, weathering all storms without conscious effort. This belief, however, is one of the most psychologically disturbing and damaging illusions about love. The stark, uncomfortable truth is that love, regardless of how intense, passionate, or deeply rooted it feels at its inception, is not a static state, but a dynamic process. It is an active verb, a living entity that, like any other living thing, requires constant nourishment, attention, and deliberate maintenance to survive and thrive. Without this conscious effort, even the most profound love will, over time, inevitably fade into indifference, resentment, or a polite, hollow companionship. The initial phase of love, often characterized by intense infatuation and passionate attachment, is largely driven by neurochemical processes. Hormones like oxytocin, dopamine, and vasopressin flood the brain, creating feelings of euphoria, intense bonding, and a powerful drive to be with the loved one. This limerence phase is intoxicating, making us feel an almost addictive pull towards our partner. During this period, the relationship often feels effortless. Every gesture is appreciated, every moment is cherished, and problems seem to melt away in the glow of new affection. This is precisely where the dangerous illusion takes root. Because it feels so natural and potent, we mistakenly assume it will always be this way. We confuse the initial neurochemical high with the sustainable foundation of a long-term bond. However, the brain cannot sustain this state indefinitely. Over time, the intensity of these neurochemical surges naturally diminishes. This isn't a sign that love is dying, it's a normal, biological transition. What replaces the initial rush is the opportunity for a deeper, more mature form of attachment, one built on shared history, mutual respect, genuine understanding, and deliberate choice. But this transition is precisely where many relationships falter, because couples fail to understand that the effortless stage is over. They expect the initial magic to persist without conscious input, and when it doesn't, they often conclude that the love was never true or that they chose the wrong person. Maintaining love is akin to tending a garden. In the beginning, the seeds might be planted in fertile ground, and the initial sprouts are exciting and vibrant. But if you stop watering, if you neglect to weed, if you don't ensure it gets sunlight, the garden will wither. You can't plant a garden once and expect it to yield fruit indefinitely without ongoing care. Love is no different. It requires consistent, deliberate actions that communicate value, affection, and commitment. These actions don't have to be grand gestures. Often, it's the small, everyday choices that make the biggest difference. Quality time. Not just coexisting in the same space, but actively engaging, listening, sharing experiences. Words of affirmation. Expressing appreciation, affection, and admiration verbally. Acts of service. Doing things for your partner that demonstrate care and lighten their load. Receiving gifts. Thoughtful tokens that show you were thinking of them. Physical touch. Affectionate gestures that reinforce connection and intimacy. These love languages, as described by Gary Chapman, are not just preferences. They are the essential nutrients that sustain emotional connection. If one partner primarily feels loved through words of affirmation, and the other expresses love through acts of service, and neither understands the other's language, both might feel unloved and unappreciated, despite genuine efforts. The love is there, but the communication of it is failing. And without effective communication, the feeling itself begins to erode. The insidious nature of this fading is its gradualness. It rarely happens overnight. Instead, it's a slow erosion, a subtle cooling. A couple might stop having deep conversations, replacing them with logistical updates. They might stop initiating physical intimacy, falling into a routine of polite coexistence. They might cease expressing gratitude or affection, assuming the other person knows. Each small neglect, each unaddressed resentment, each moment of taking the other for granted chips away at the foundation. Over months and years, these small neglects accumulate, creating a significant emotional distance that can feel insurmountable. By the time one or both partners realize the love has faded, it often feels too late to revive it, because the emotional muscles required for maintenance have atrophied. This psychological fact is disturbing because it challenges our romantic ideals and places the onus of responsibility squarely on our shoulders. It implies that happily ever after is not a destination achieved, but a journey continually undertaken. It means that even when life gets busy, stressful, or mundane, the deliberate act of nurturing the relationship cannot be deferred indefinitely. Many people, when confronted with the natural decline of initial passion, mistakenly conclude that they are with the wrong person, or that the spark is gone and cannot be rekindled. They fail to recognize that the spark doesn't just spontaneously generate. It requires fuel and fanning. Moreover, the societal pressure to maintain an image of effortless perfection in relationships further exacerbates this issue. Couples often hide their struggles, fearing judgment or admitting that their love requires work. This secrecy prevents them from seeking help, learning new communication skills, or actively working on their connection. They perpetuate the myth that true love should be easy, leaving themselves feeling isolated and inadequate when their own relationship inevitably demands effort. To counteract this natural fading, couples must adopt a proactive, intentional approach to their relationship. This involves date nights and quality time, regularly setting aside dedicated time for connection, free from distractions, open and honest conversation, regularly checking in with each other, discussing needs, feelings, and resentments before they fester, shared activities and novelty, introducing new experiences and challenges to keep the relationship exciting and prevent boredom, expressions of appreciation, regularly verbalizing gratitude and affection, conflict resolution skills, learning to navigate disagreements constructively without letting them erode the foundation of trust, empathy and understanding, actively seeking to understand the partner's perspective even when disagreeing, self-care, ensuring individual needs are met so that one can bring their best self to the relationship. The commitment to love is not just a commitment to a person, but a commitment to the ongoing work of the relationship itself. It means choosing to love, not just feeling love. It means recognizing that the initial feeling is a beautiful gift, but the sustained connection is a deliberate creation. The disturbing part is realizing that many beautiful, seemingly strong loves wither not because of a catastrophic event, but because of 1,000 tiny neglects, because the illusion of effortless permanence prevented the conscious effort required for true endurance. Understanding this fact is not an indictment of love, but an invitation to cherish it, nurture it, and actively fight for its longevity, transforming it from a fleeting feeling into an enduring, resilient bond. 4. People cheat for validation more often than for sex. The prevailing societal narrative surrounding infidelity often frames it as primarily a physical act, a transgression motivated by an insatiable libido or a desire for novel sexual experiences. While sexual attraction and opportunities certainly play a role, this singular focus on the physical aspect misses a far more disturbing and pervasive psychological truth. A significant number of people cheat not primarily for sex, but for validation. They are seeking an emotional affirmation, a mirror reflecting a desirable self-image that they feel is no longer adequately provided by their primary relationship, or perhaps was never truly cultivated within themselves. This search for validation stems from a deep-seated human need to feel seen, desired, admired, and worthy. In the early stages of a relationship, partners often provide an abundance of this validation. They shower us with compliments, make us feel special, listen intently, and reflect back to us an idealized version of ourselves. This intoxicating feeling of being truly appreciated and desired is a powerful glue. However, as relationships mature, the intensity of this initial validation can naturally diminish. Life intervenes, routines set in, and the initial glow can give way to comfortable familiarity. This doesn't mean love has faded, but the explicit, effusive validation often becomes less frequent. For individuals with underlying insecurities, a fragile sense of self-worth, or those who rely heavily on external affirmation, this decline in explicit validation can be profoundly unsettling. They begin to feel invisible, unappreciated, or that their attractiveness and desirability have waned. The internal void created by these insecurities then becomes fertile ground for seeking external solutions. An affair, in this context, becomes less about the physical act and more about the emotional sustenance it provides. The affair partner often steps into the role of the admirer, offering the attention, praise, and fervent desire that the cheater feels is missing from their primary relationship, or, more accurately, missing from their internal experience of themselves. Consider a person who feels their career has stalled, or they are aging, or they are no longer as exciting as they once were. Their self-esteem takes a hit. If their partner, perhaps preoccupied with their own stresses or simply less effusive by nature, doesn't actively and consistently reassure them of their worth, the individual might feel a growing internal emptiness. Then an affair partner enters the picture, perhaps a colleague who admires their work ethic, a new acquaintance who finds them fascinating, or someone who simply makes them feel attractive and vital again. The thrill isn't just the sex, it's the feeling of being seen, heard, desired, and validated in a way they perceive as lacking elsewhere. The affair becomes a psychological balm, a temporary fix for a deeper wound of self-doubt. The sex in these affairs, while often present, can be secondary or even a byproduct of the emotional connection and validation. It's the tangible manifestation of being desired, the physical proof that they are still attractive and capable of evoking passion. But the primary driver is the ego boost, the reaffirmation of their attractiveness, intelligence, or charisma. The affair partner often provides a fresh, unbiased perspective, free from the shared history and potential resentments. They see the cheater through a new, admiring lens, which can be incredibly seductive for someone feeling emotionally starved. This disturbing truth highlights a critical distinction. infidelity is often not a rejection of the primary partner as a person, but a desperate, misguided attempt to find a missing piece within oneself reflected back by someone new. The cheater isn't necessarily seeking a better partner, but a better version of themselves as perceived and validated by an external source. This is why many people who cheat claim to still love their primary partner deeply. They are not leaving their partner, they are trying to fill up themselves. The psychological implications are profound. It suggests that infidelity is often a symptom of individual insecurity. Rather than a flaw in the relationship itself, it can point to a fragility in one person's self-worth that predates or is exacerbated by the relationship. Relationships need more than love. They need affirmation. Partners, especially long-term ones, need to consistently make each other feel valued, desired, and seen, understanding that these needs don't magically disappear. The other person is often a placeholder. The affair partner is frequently not loved for who they are, but for the role they play in validating the cheater's ego. This is why many affairs crumble once the initial high wears off, or if the affair partner starts making their own demands. Understanding this motivation behind infidelity is disturbing because it forces us to look beyond the simplistic bad person narrative and confront the complex psychological vulnerabilities that can drive such actions. It also challenges the idea that a relationship alone can be the sole source of a person's self-esteem. While a loving partner can certainly contribute to our sense of worth, ultimately, true validation must come from within. Relying solely on a partner for self-worth creates an unsustainable dependency, making one vulnerable to seeking external validation if the primary source seems to dwindle. For the betrayed partner, this truth can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, it might offer a crumb of understanding that the infidelity wasn't necessarily a direct rejection of their worth or love. On the other hand, it can be deeply painful to realize that their partner sought validation elsewhere, often perceiving it as a profound betrayal of trust and intimacy, regardless of the underlying motivation. The feeling of being not enough is still deeply present. Preventing this type of infidelity requires a multifaceted approach. Individual self-work. Cultivating a strong internal sense of self-worth and not relying solely on external validation. This might involve therapy, self-reflection, and pursuing personal passions. Conscious validation in relationships. Partners actively and regularly expressing appreciation, admiration, and desire for each other. This means being explicit, not just assuming the other person knows. Open communication about needs. Creating a safe space where both partners can express their emotional needs, including the need for validation, without shame or judgment. Addressing relationship dynamics. If there's a breakdown in communication, intimacy, or mutual appreciation, addressing these issues head-on rather than letting them fester. The disturbing psychological fact is that the human ego's hunger for validation can be so potent that it overrides moral boundaries, commitment, and even deep love. It reveals that our internal landscape, our sense of self-worth, plays a far more significant role in the fidelity of a relationship than we often care to admit. Infidelity, when viewed through this lens, becomes less about a search for physical pleasure and more about a desperate, misguided quest for self-affirmation. A stark reminder that our deepest insecurities can lead us down the most destructive paths in the pursuit of feeling seen and valued. 5. Romantic fantasies set unrealistic expectations for real relationships. From the earliest fairy tales to the most popular romantic comedies, we are inundated with narratives that paint a picture of love as a magical, effortless, and perpetually blissful state. These romantic fantasies, deeply embedded in our cultural consciousness, shape our expectations long before we ever experience a real relationship. They promise a soulmate who completes us, a love that overcomes all obstacles with passionate declarations, and a life free from mundane struggles. The disturbing psychological truth is that these idealized visions, while comforting and entertaining, are profoundly damaging. They set unrealistic expectations for real relationships, creating a blueprint for disappointment and contributing to a pervasive dissatisfaction when reality inevitably falls short of the fantasy. The problem isn't the desire for love itself, but the nature of the love we are taught to desire. Romantic fantasies typically feature instantaneous, overwhelming connection, love at first sight, an immediate and undeniable spark that signifies the one. Effortless harmony, couples who rarely argue, always understand each other, and seamlessly navigate life's challenges. Constant passion and excitement, a perpetual state of intense romance, grand gestures, and thrilling newness. Perfect compatibility, partners who share every interest, agree on every major life decision, and fulfill every unspoken need. Problem-free existence. Once the one is found, all personal and external problems magically resolve or become insignificant. The happily ever after ending. The narrative often concludes at the peak of romance, implying that the hard work of maintaining love simply doesn't exist. When individuals steeped in these fantasies enter real relationships, they carry these unconscious expectations as a measuring stick. The initial phase of a new relationship, often called the honeymoon period or limerence, can sometimes mimic the fantasy, with intense emotions, novelty, and a tendency to overlook flaws. This momentary alignment between fantasy and reality can reinforce the belief that the fantasy is achievable. However, as the relationship progresses, as familiarity sets in, as individual quirks emerge, and as real-life challenges inevitably arise, the stark contrast between fantasy and reality becomes painfully apparent. Consider the expectation of effortless harmony. When a real couple encounters their first significant argument, the individual steeped in fantasy might interpret this as a catastrophic sign that this isn't true love, or we're not meant to be. They might feel disillusioned, believing that a truly compatible couple wouldn't experience such friction. They fail to understand that conflict is an inevitable and even healthy part of any intimate relationship, providing opportunities for growth and deeper understanding. The fantasy offers no tools for conflict resolution, only the expectation that it won't occur. Similarly, the expectation of constant passion and excitement can lead to profound dissatisfaction during the natural evolution of a long-term relationship. The initial neurochemical rush of new love gives way to a more stable, comfortable, and often less overtly dramatic form of affection. If one is constantly chasing the spark of the early days, they might interpret this natural shift as a sign that love has died or that their partner is no longer exciting enough. They might become bored, restless, or even seek out new relationships in a futile attempt to perpetually recapture the fleeting intensity of initial infatuation, mistaking novelty for true depth. The concept of a soulmate who completes us is particularly insidious. This fantasy suggests that we are inherently incomplete individuals until we find our other half, who will magically fill all our voids and solve all our problems. This not only places an impossible burden on the partner, expecting them to be our sole source of happiness and fulfillment, but also discourages individual growth and self-sufficiency. When the partner inevitably fails to be a perfect mirror or a constant source of completion, the individual feels disappointed, resentful, and still incomplete, blaming the partner for not fulfilling an unrealistic role. The disturbing aspect of these fantasies is how deeply they warp our perception of what a healthy, sustainable relationship actually entails. They teach us to chase an idealized image rather than cultivate the skills, patience, and resilience required for real connection. They make us prone to premature abandonment, giving up on relationships too quickly when the magic wears off or when challenges arise, believing that the right person wouldn't present such difficulties. Chronic dissatisfaction, constantly comparing our real relationship to an unattainable ideal, leading to a pervasive sense of unhappiness and a feeling that something is always missing. Inability to appreciate reality, overlooking the genuine joys, comforts, and profound connections that exist in real, imperfect relationships because they don't match the dramatic flair of fiction. Emotional immaturity, lacking the tools for conflict resolution, compromise, and sustained effort because the fantasy suggests these aren't necessary. Moreover, these fantasies can make us blind to red flags in potential partners. If someone perfectly embodies the fantasy at the outset, showering us with grand gestures, intense declarations, and an immediate sense of completeness, we might overlook manipulative behaviors, inconsistency, or a lack of genuine compatibility, because the fantasy overrides critical judgment. We fall in love with the idea of what they represent rather than seeing them for who they truly are. Overcoming the grip of romantic fantasies requires a conscious deconstruction of these narratives and a commitment to embracing the messy, imperfect, but ultimately more rewarding reality of human connection. This involves media literacy, critically analyzing romantic media and recognizing it as entertainment, not a blueprint for life. Realistic expectations, understanding that love involves effort, compromise, communication, and navigating conflict. It's a journey, not a destination. Self-completeness, cultivating a strong sense of self-worth and happiness independently, rather than expecting a partner to complete us. Focus on growth and resilience, valuing a partner who is willing to work through challenges and grow alongside us, rather than one who promises a problem-free existence. Appreciating the mundane, finding joy and connection in the everyday moments, the quiet comforts, and the shared routines that form the backbone of lasting love. The disturbing psychological fact is that the very stories we tell ourselves about love, designed to inspire and delight, often serve as a cruel trap, setting us up for inevitable disappointment. By perpetuating an unattainable ideal, romantic fantasies prevent us from fully engaging with, appreciating, and building the imperfectly beautiful, resilient, and deeply human connections that are actually possible. True love isn't about finding a fantasy. It's about building a reality, one imperfect moment at a time, with a real, imperfect person, and finding profound beauty in that shared, authentic journey. 6. Most people don't know what they actually want in a partner. It's a question we've all been asked, and one we often confidently answer. What are you looking for in a partner? We readily list traits: kind, funny, intelligent, adventurous, stable, good-looking. We might even have a detailed mental checklist, a composite sketch of our ideal mate. The disturbing psychological truth, however, is that for a vast majority of people, this carefully constructed list is largely superficial, often influenced by societal ideals, past experiences, or what we think we should want. In reality, most people don't truly understand their deepest, most fundamental needs and desires in a romantic partner until they are confronted with them, often through trial and error or through painful self-reflection. This lack of genuine self-awareness leads to a cycle of choosing partners who ultimately don't fulfill core needs, fostering dissatisfaction, repeated relationship patterns, and a persistent feeling that something is missing. The reasons for this self-deception are complex. Firstly, we are heavily influenced by external factors. Media, friends, family, and cultural narratives bombard us with archetypes of desirable partners. We internalize these ideals, often adopting them as our own, without critical examination. For example, the idea of a bad boy or a damsel in distress might seem appealing in fiction, but in reality, the traits associated with these archetypes often lead to instability or codependency, which are far from what we truly need for long-term happiness. Similarly, a focus on superficial traits like wealth, status, or physical appearance often overshadows deeper compatibility needs. Secondly, our conscious desires often conflict with our unconscious needs. On a conscious level, we might articulate a desire for an independent, strong-willed partner. Yet unconsciously, due to unresolved childhood issues or attachment styles, we might be drawn to someone who is emotionally dependent or who requires us to be the fixer. Or we might consciously seek a calm, stable partner, while unconsciously being drawn to the drama and intensity of someone who mirrors our own internal chaos. These unconscious patterns are powerful drivers, often overriding our stated preferences and leading us into relationships that feel familiar, even if they are ultimately unfulfilling. Thirdly, many people confuse wants with needs. A want might be a partner who loves cooking. A need might be a partner who is emotionally available and supportive during times of stress. We often prioritize the easily identifiable wants because they are tangible and culturally celebrated, while the deeper needs remain unexamined because they require introspection and emotional vulnerability to identify. We might find a partner who checks all the boxes on our superficial list, funny, attractive, good job, only to discover a profound emptiness because a critical emotional need, like feeling truly seen or deeply understood, is consistently unmet. This lack of clarity about what we actually want manifests in several disturbing ways. Repetitive relationship patterns. People often find themselves in similar, unfulfilling relationships repeatedly, dating variations of the same problematic personality type, because they haven't identified the underlying need that is drawing them to or repelling them from certain individuals. They blame external circumstances or bad luck rather than recognizing their own internal blueprint for selection. Disappointment and resentment. When a partner, despite their many good qualities, fails to meet an unarticulated core need, resentment can build. The person doesn't know why they're unhappy, only that they are. They might blame the partner for not being enough, without understanding what enough truly means for them. Difficulty committing or feeling satisfied. Even in seemingly good relationships, a vague sense of dissatisfaction can linger. This often happens when a partner fulfills many conscious wants but misses a crucial unconscious need. This can lead to commitment phobia or a constant search for something better even when a perfectly good partner is right in front of them. Focus on superficiality. The inability to identify deeper needs keeps people stuck in a cycle of judging potential partners based on superficial criteria that don't predict long-term compatibility or happiness. They might discard a genuinely kind and compatible person because they don't fit a narrow physical ideal, or pursue someone charming but emotionally unavailable. Identifying what we truly want in a partner requires a deep dive into self-awareness. It means asking uncomfortable questions. What makes me feel truly safe and secure in a relationship? What emotional states do I most value? Example, peace, excitement, intellectual stimulation, deep intimacy. What are my core values, and how important is it for a partner to share them? What are my biggest fears in a relationship, and what kind of partner would help me navigate them healthily? What kind of support do I genuinely need when I'm at my lowest? What are the patterns in my past relationships, and what do they reveal about my unmet needs or unhealthy attractions? Am I seeking a partner to complete me or to complement me? The disturbing part of this psychological fact is that many people go through their entire lives without ever truly answering these questions, perpetually chasing an elusive ideal or settling for something that only partially fulfills them. They might intellectualize their desires, but their emotional compass remains uncalibrated, pointing them towards patterns that don't serve their deepest well-being. This can lead to a profound sense of loneliness, even when partnered, a feeling of being fundamentally misunderstood or unfulfilled. Furthermore, societal pressures often discourage this kind of deep introspection. We're encouraged to just go with the flow or fall in love, rather than approaching relationships with intentional self-knowledge. The idea that love should be spontaneous and effortless can make the deliberate process of identifying needs seem unromantic or analytical, when in fact it's a crucial step towards building a truly authentic and satisfying connection. To overcome this, individuals must embark on a journey of self-discovery, often independently of a relationship. This can involve journaling, writing down thoughts, feelings, and relationship experiences to identify recurring patterns and core desires. Therapy, working with a professional to uncover unconscious needs, attachment styles, and past traumas that influence partner selection. Mindfulness and self-reflection, regularly checking in with one's emotional state and understanding what truly brings a sense of peace, joy, or fulfillment. Learning from past relationships, instead of just blaming ex-partners, critically analyzing what went wrong and what key needs were unmet or what unhealthy patterns were reinforced. Distinguishing wants versus needs, creating two separate lists and prioritizing the non-negotiable emotional and value-based needs. The disturbing psychological fact that most people don't know what they truly want in a partner underscores the profound importance of self-awareness in love. Without a clear understanding of our own internal landscape, we are like ships without a compass, drifting from one relationship to another, guided by superficial desires or unconscious patterns, always searching but rarely finding the deep, resonant connection that our souls genuinely crave. True love begins not with finding the perfect other, but with understanding the true self. 7. Partners often unconsciously compete with each other. In the realm of romantic love, the ideal is one of unity, mutual support, and shared success. We envision partners as teammates, working together towards common goals, celebrating each other's triumphs, and lifting each other up during failures. This ideal, however, often masks a disturbing psychological undercurrent. Partners frequently engage in unconscious competition with each other. This isn't always overt or malicious. It's a subtle, often unrecognized dynamic driven by ego, insecurity, and societal conditioning, which can slowly erode intimacy, breed resentment, and undermine the very foundation of mutual respect and admiration. This unconscious competition can manifest in various domains. Career and success. One partner might achieve a significant promotion or recognition, and while the other offers congratulations, there might be a subtle pang of envy, a feeling of being left behind, or an unconscious need to quickly achieve something similar or greater. Social standing and attention. At a social gathering, one partner might command more attention, tell better stories, or receive more compliments. The other might feel a subtle diminishment, a yearning for similar recognition, leading to an unconscious attempt to outshine them in the next interaction. Parenting. Couples can subtly compete over who is the better parent, who sacrifices more, who understands the children better, or whose parenting style is more effective. This can lead to undermining each other's authority or criticism rather than collaborative parenting. Emotional suffering. In times of stress or illness, partners might unconsciously compete over whose suffering is greater, whose needs are more urgent, or who deserves more sympathy, turning empathy into a contest. Who does more? A common and insidious form of competition revolves around household chores, emotional labor, or financial contributions. Partners might keep an unconscious tally, feeling resentful if they perceive themselves as carrying a heavier load, rather than viewing contributions as part of a shared effort. Intellectual superiority. One partner might subtly correct the other, dismiss their opinions, or dominate conversations, unconsciously asserting intellectual dominance. The roots of this unconscious competition are varied. Firstly, ego and self-esteem play a huge role. Our sense of self-worth is often tied to our achievements and perceived superiority. When a partner succeeds, it can, for a fragile ego, feel like a threat to one's own standing, rather than a shared victory. This triggers defensive mechanisms and a drive to reassert one's own value. Secondly, societal conditioning often pits individuals against each other, even in intimate relationships. We're taught to strive for individual success, to be the best, and this competitive mindset doesn't magically disappear when we enter a partnership. Thirdly, insecurity fuels competition. A partner who feels insecure about their own intelligence, attractiveness, or success might unconsciously feel threatened by their partner's strengths, leading them to subtly try to diminish or outdo them. This isn't about genuinely wanting their partner to fail, but about an internal need to feel good enough by comparison. Fourthly, unresolved power dynamics can contribute. If one partner feels consistently less powerful or heard, they might unconsciously seek to regain balance through subtle competitive behaviors. The disturbing nature of this phenomenon lies in its invisibility and its corrosive effect. Because it's often unconscious, partners aren't even aware they're doing it, and therefore can't address it. The behaviors are subtle, a backhanded compliment.
that was a good idea for you. A quick deflection of praise. Oh, it was nothing, but my project was much harder. A tendency to one-up a story, or a subtle dismissal of a partner's accomplishment. These small, seemingly insignificant actions accumulate, creating a pervasive atmosphere of subtle tension, insecurity, and a lack of genuine mutual admiration. The consequences of unconscious competition are profound. Erosion of trust and intimacy. When one partner feels subtly undermined or constantly compared, trust erodes. Intimacy requires vulnerability, but it's hard to be vulnerable with someone you unconsciously perceive as a rival. Resentment. The constant undercurrent of competition breeds resentment. The winning partner might feel their successes are never truly celebrated, while the losing partner feels perpetually inadequate or unappreciated. Stifled growth. Instead of encouraging each other to reach their full potential, partners might unconsciously hold each other back, fearing that the other's growth will highlight their own perceived deficiencies. Lack of genuine support. The ability to truly be present for a partner's joy or sorrow is compromised when there's an underlying competitive agenda. Empathy becomes difficult when you're secretly comparing your own struggles or achievements. Emotional distance. Over time, the subtle competition creates a wedge, leading to emotional distance and a feeling of being alone even within the relationship.
Recognizing and addressing unconscious competition requires deep self-awareness and courageous communication. It demands that individuals look inward and question their own reactions to their partner's successes and struggles. Self-reflection. When your partner achieves something great, what is your first internal reaction? Is it pure joy, or is there a flicker of envy, inadequacy, or comparison? Be honest with yourself. Open communication. Create a safe space to discuss these dynamics. One partner might say, "Sometimes when you talk about your work success, I feel a little insecure about my own career. I love that you're doing well, but I also feel a bit left behind." This isn't an accusation, but an honest sharing of an internal experience. Celebrate each other genuinely. Make a conscious effort to genuinely celebrate your partner's wins, big and small, without immediately turning the conversation back to yourself or your own achievements. Support each other's growth. Actively encourage your partner's aspirations and provide support, understanding that their growth enhances the partnership rather than diminishing you. Shift from comparison to collaboration. Reframe challenges as shared problems to be solved together, rather than opportunities for one-upmanship. The disturbing psychological fact is that even in our most intimate bonds, the human ego's need for validation and superiority can subtly undermine the very love we cherish. Unconscious competition transforms a partnership into a subtle rivalry, preventing the deep unconditional acceptance and mutual upliftment that true love promises. Acknowledging this hidden dynamic is the first step towards dismantling it, allowing partners to truly function as a team, celebrating each other's unique strengths without fear or envy, and building a relationship founded on genuine, unwavering support. 8. People fall harder for those who match their hidden insecurities. This is one of the most counterintuitive and disturbing psychological truths about attraction. On a conscious level, we often seek partners who make us feel strong, secure, and complete. We list qualities like confidence, stability, and emotional maturity as desirable traits. Yet, beneath the surface of our conscious desires, a powerful and often destructive unconscious mechanism is at play. We frequently find ourselves irresistibly drawn to individuals who, in some subtle or overt way, mirror or tap into our deepest, most hidden insecurities. This isn't about seeking someone to fix us, it's about a magnetic pull towards familiarity, even if that familiarity is rooted in our own unhealed wounds. The phenomenon stems from several psychological principles. The comfort of the familiar. Our brains are wired for pattern recognition and familiarity. Even if a pattern is unhealthy or painful, it feels known, predictable, and therefore, in a strange way, safe. A partner who evokes feelings connected to our insecurities might feel right, because it resonates with an established internal narrative, even if that narrative is one of self-doubt or unworthiness. Unconscious drive to heal past wounds. We often unconsciously choose partners who resemble, in some key psychological aspect, a parent or significant figure from our past who contributed to our insecurities. The unconscious hope is that this time we can fix the dynamic, earn the love, or achieve the validation we missed out on before, thereby healing the original wound. This is a powerful, yet often futile attempt at corrective emotional experience. Projection and shadow work. We might project our own unacknowledged insecurities onto a partner. Or we might be drawn to a partner who embodies the very qualities we secretly fear or dislike in ourselves, our shadow self. This can be a subconscious attempt to confront and integrate these parts of ourselves or to externalize them. Validation of negative self-beliefs. If someone deeply believes they are not worthy of unconditional love, they might unconsciously gravitate towards partners who are inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or critical. This dynamic, while painful, paradoxically confirms their existing negative self-belief, creating a perverse sense of validation. See, I told myself I wasn't worthy, and this relationship proves it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's illustrate with examples. The fear of abandonment. Someone with a deep-seated fear of abandonment, perhaps from an inconsistent caregiver in childhood, might consciously desire a stable, committed partner. However, they might repeatedly find themselves drawn to partners who are emotionally unavailable, commitment-phobic, or who have a pattern of leaving. The initial thrill might come from the challenge of winning this elusive person, but the underlying dynamic constantly triggers their core abandonment fear, keeping them in a state of anxious attachment. The familiarity of the struggle, however painful, feels more real than an effortless, secure connection. The need for control, fear of helplessness. An individual who feels deeply insecure about their own competence or ability to navigate life might be drawn to a partner who is overly critical, controlling, or who constantly points out their flaws. While consciously they might resent the criticism, unconsciously it might feed into their belief that they need someone to guide them, or that they are indeed incompetent. The partner's control, though stifling, might offer a perverse sense of security by confirming their perceived helplessness. The belief of unworthiness. Someone who doesn't believe they are truly lovable or deserving of good things might be attracted to a partner who is constantly demanding, unappreciative, or even abusive. The dynamic, though destructive, aligns with their internal narrative of unworthiness, making it feel strangely comfortable or deserved. A truly loving and respectful partner might feel too good to be true, or even boring, because it doesn't resonate with their internal landscape of struggle. The disturbing aspect is that this magnetic pull often feels like intense chemistry or a profound connection. The spark isn't necessarily a sign of healthy compatibility, but often a recognition of a shared wound or an echo of past trauma. The intensity arises from the triggering of deep emotional patterns, which can be mistaken for passionate love. This makes it incredibly difficult to break free from these patterns, as the very relationships that cause the most pain are often the ones that feel most compelling.
The consequences of falling for those who match our hidden insecurities are severe. Reinforcement of insecurities. Instead of healing, the relationship often perpetuates and deepens the very insecurities that drew us to the partner. Dysfunctional dynamics. These relationships often become characterized by codependency, emotional manipulation, power imbalances, and chronic dissatisfaction. Cycle of pain. Individuals find themselves repeatedly experiencing similar heartbreaks, betrayals, or feelings of unworthiness, unable to identify the underlying pattern. Stunted growth. Instead of fostering personal growth, these relationships keep individuals stuck in old patterns, preventing them from developing healthier coping mechanisms or a stronger sense of self. Breaking this cycle requires profound self-awareness, often aided by therapy. It involves identifying core insecurities, understanding what your deepest fears and negative self-beliefs are, Recognizing unhealthy patterns. Looking at your past relationships and identifying common themes, especially regarding the types of partners you've chosen and the dynamics that emerged. Challenging the spark. Learning to differentiate between genuine, healthy connection and the intense, often chaotic chemistry that arises from triggered wounds. Healing inner wounds. Actively working on self-esteem, attachment issues, and past traumas so that you are not seeking a partner to complete or fix you or to replay old dramas. Choosing consciously. Making deliberate choices about partners based on shared values, emotional maturity, and genuine compatibility, rather than simply being swept away by intense, familiar feelings. Embracing boring. Sometimes a truly healthy, secure, and respectful relationship might initially feel less exciting or passionate because it doesn't trigger the old dramatic wounds. Learning to appreciate this peaceful, stable connection is crucial. The disturbing psychological fact that we are drawn to those who match our hidden insecurities reveals the powerful and often destructive influence of our unconscious mind on our romantic choices. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that our search for love can inadvertently lead us to recreate the very pain we seek to escape. True love, in this context, begins not with finding a partner who mirrors our wounds, but with the courageous act of healing those wounds ourselves, so we can finally choose a partner who supports our growth rather than perpetuating our pain. 9. Many people confuse control with care. In the intricate dance of human relationships, the lines between genuine care and insidious control can become dangerously blurred. On the surface, acts of control might be disguised as concern, protection, or even profound love. A partner who constantly checks in, dictates choices, expresses jealousy, or attempts to manage another's life might genuinely believe they are demonstrating deep affection and responsibility. The disturbing psychological truth, however, is that many people, both those who exert control and those who are subjected to it, frequently confuse control with care. This misinterpretation stems from a complex interplay of insecurity, fear, past experiences, and societal conditioning, leading to relationships that are stifling, disempowering, and ultimately devoid of true respect and autonomy. Let's unpack the mechanisms behind this confusion. Insecurity and fear of loss, controller's side. For the person exerting control, their actions often stem from deep-seated insecurity, a fear of abandonment, or a profound anxiety about losing their partner. They might believe that by controlling their partner's actions, choices, or social interactions, they can prevent perceived threats to the relationship or to their own sense of security. This is often rooted in a lack of trust, not necessarily in the partner's character, but in the controller's own ability to cope with uncertainty or potential loss. They might genuinely feel they are protecting the relationship or their partner from harm, when in reality, they are suffocating it. Misinterpretation of intensity, controlled person's side. For the person being controlled, the intensity of the controller's focus can be misinterpreted as a sign of deep love. Jealousy, for instance, might be seen as proof that they love me so much they can't stand the thought of losing me, rather than a red flag signaling insecurity and a lack of trust. Constant checking in might be interpreted as they care about my safety rather than an infringement on personal space and autonomy. The controller's possessiveness can be mistaken for passion, and their demands for exclusivity as unwavering devotion. Low self-esteem, controlled person's side. Individuals with low self-esteem might feel unworthy of true unconditional love. They might unconsciously believe that they need to be managed or that someone else knows what's best for them. A controlling partner, by making decisions and taking charge, might ironically provide a perverse sense of security, relieving the burden of personal responsibility. They might also confuse the controller's attention, however negative, with being valued. Past experiences.
Someone who grew up in an environment where control was equated with love, for instance, an overprotective parent, a demanding partner, might normalize these behaviors. They might not have a healthy model of what respectful, autonomous love looks like, and thus accept controlling behaviors as a natural part of intimacy. Societal narratives. Certain romantic narratives, particularly in older media, sometimes romanticize possessiveness and jealousy as signs of intense love, further blurring the lines. The idea of claiming a partner or being all consumed by love can be misconstrued as justification for controlling behaviors. Constant checking in, texting or calling incessantly throughout the day, demanding to know a partner's whereabouts and activities, justified as, "I just miss you," or "I worry about you."
The disturbing aspect is that this confusion often prevents individuals from recognizing unhealthy dynamics until they are deeply entrenched. The controlled partner gradually loses their sense of self, their autonomy erodes, and they become dependent on the controller for validation and decision-making. The relationship becomes a cage, albeit one that might initially feel like a protective embrace. The controller, meanwhile, never addresses their underlying insecurities, perpetuating a cycle of fear-driven behavior that ultimately pushes their partner away or creates a shell of a relationship. The consequences are severe. Loss of identity and autonomy. The controlled partner's sense of self diminishes, their personal boundaries are violated, and their ability to make independent choices atrophies. Resentment and bitterness. Beneath the surface, resentment festers, leading to emotional distance and a breakdown of genuine intimacy. Fear and anxiety. The controlled partner lives in a state of constant anxiety, fearing their partner's reactions or unknowingly crossing a line. Emotional abuse. While often not intended as such, persistent controlling behavior is a form of emotional abuse, eroding self-worth and creating an unhealthy power imbalance. Stifled growth. Neither partner truly grows. The controller remains trapped in his insecurity, and the controlled partner is prevented from exploring their full potential. Breaking free from this dynamic requires a conscious redefinition of what love truly means. It means understanding that true care fosters growth, autonomy, and respect, not constriction. Recognizing the signs. Both partners need to learn to identify controlling behaviors, even when they are disguised as love. Establishing boundaries. The controlled partner needs to learn to set and enforce healthy boundaries, even if it feels uncomfortable or provokes conflict. Challenging assumptions. The controller needs to question the motivations behind their actions. Is this truly about care, or is it about my own fear and insecurity? Fostering trust. Both partners need to work on building genuine trust, which requires vulnerability, honesty, and respecting each other's autonomy. Seeking support. Therapy can be invaluable for both individuals to address underlying insecurities, learn healthy communication, and develop a more respectful relational dynamic. The disturbing psychological fact that many people confuse control with care highlights the dangerous path of unchecked insecurity and a distorted understanding of love. It reveals how easily affection can morph into suffocation, and how the very desire to hold on to someone can lead to their emotional imprisonment. True love liberates and empowers. It does not seek to possess or diminish. Recognizing this distinction is crucial for cultivating relationships that are genuinely loving, respectful, and conducive to the growth of both individuals. The disturbing psychological fact that many people confuse control with care highlights the dangerous path of unchecked insecurity and a distorted understanding of love. It reveals how easily affection can morph into suffocation, and how the very desire to hold on to someone can lead to their emotional imprisonment. True love liberates and empowers. It does not seek to possess or diminish. Recognizing this distinction is crucial for cultivating relationships that are genuinely loving, respectful, and conducive to the growth of both individuals. Love often triggers childhood abandonment fears.
For many, the experience of falling in love is envisioned as a journey towards security, belonging, and an end to loneliness. It promises a haven where one is truly seen, cherished, and unconditionally accepted. Yet, for a disturbing number of individuals, the very act of forming a deep, loving attachment paradoxically triggers their most primal and profound fears, the fear of abandonment, often rooted in early childhood experiences. This isn't a conscious choice, but an unconscious activation of old wounds, transforming the potential for connection into a minefield of anxiety, clinginess, or preemptive withdrawal. Childhood abandonment fears stem from various experiences, not necessarily overt physical abandonment. They can arise from inconsistent caregiving, a parent who is sometimes present and loving, but at other times emotionally unavailable, preoccupied, or physically absent, creating an unpredictable environment where the child never felt entirely secure in their attachment. Emotional neglect. Even with physically present parents, a lack of emotional attunement, validation, or responsiveness can leave a child feeling unseen, unheard, and fundamentally alone, leading to a core belief that their emotional needs will not be met. Traumatic separations. Experiences like parental divorce, prolonged hospital stays, or the death of a primary caregiver can create a profound sense of loss and a fear that anyone close will eventually leave. Conditional love. If love was perceived as conditional on good behavior or achievement, a child might internalize the belief that love is fragile and can be withdrawn if they are not perfect. When an individual with these unhealed wounds enters a romantic relationship, the increasing intimacy and emotional investment act as a powerful trigger. As they allow themselves to love and be loved, the stakes become incredibly high. The deeper the connection, the greater the potential for loss, and thus the more intensely the old fears are activated. It's as if their unconscious mind, in an attempt to protect them from future pain, sounds a deafening alarm. This activation of abandonment fears can manifest in several disturbing ways. Anxious attachment. The person becomes overly preoccupied with the relationship, constantly seeking reassurance, fearing their partner will leave, interpreting minor absences or changes in mood as signs of impending abandonment. They might become clingy, demanding, or jealous, pushing their partner away with the very behaviors designed to keep them close. Avoidant attachment. Conversely, some individuals, fearing the pain of abandonment, preemptively withdraw. As intimacy deepens, they might pull away, create emotional distance, sabotage the relationship, or develop a sudden desire for space or freedom. This is a defense mechanism to avoid the vulnerability of deep connection and the potential pain of loss. They might rationalize it as a need for independence, but it's often a fear of getting too close and then being hurt. Hypersensitivity to cues. Every subtle shift in a partner's tone, every delayed text, every moment of independence activity is scrutinized through the lens of potential abandonment. Small events are catastrophized into evidence of impending doom, creating constant anxiety and misinterpretation. Self-sabotage. Unconsciously, the individual might create situations that push their partner away, confirming their deepest fear. See, I knew they would leave. I'm unlovable. This is a perverse attempt to control the narrative of abandonment, making it happen on their terms rather than being blindsided. Testing the partner. They might repeatedly test their partner's commitment, pushing boundaries or creating drama, hoping that the partner's enduring presence will finally prove their fears wrong. This is often exhausting for the partner and rarely provides lasting reassurance. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon is that the very relationship that promises solace becomes a source of intense distress. The person experiencing these fears is caught in a cruel paradox. They crave deep connection, but the closer they get, the more their past wounds scream, making genuine secure attachment incredibly difficult. Their partner, meanwhile, might feel confused, frustrated, or exhausted by the constant need for reassurance, the sudden withdrawals, or the inexplicable outbursts, often without understanding the profound fear driving these behaviors.
This dynamic can lead to a cycle where the fear of abandonment actually creates the very abandonment it dreads. The clinginess pushes the partner away.
The withdrawal creates distance, and the self-sabotage fulfills the prophecy. The relationship, instead of being a safe harbor, becomes a reenactment of past traumas. Healing and navigating these fears requires profound self-awareness, compassion, and often professional help. Identification, recognizing that these intense reactions are rooted in past experiences, not necessarily the current reality of the relationship. Understanding attachment styles. Learning about anxious, avoidant, and secure attachment styles can provide a framework for understanding one's own patterns and those of a partner. Therapy. Working with a therapist to process childhood wounds, develop secure attachment strategies, and learn to self-soothe rather than relying solely on a partner for regulation. Communication. Openly and vulnerably communicating these fears to a partner, explaining the roots of the anxiety, rather than acting them out. A partner cannot help if they don't understand the underlying cause. Building internal security. Cultivating a strong sense of self-worth and self-sufficiency, understanding that while a partner enhances life, they are not solely responsible for one's emotional well-being. Choosing secure partners. Consciously seeking partners who demonstrate consistency, emotional availability, and a secure attachment style rather than those who trigger old wounds. The disturbing psychological fact that love often triggers childhood abandonment fears reveals the profound impact of our early experiences on our adult relationships. It challenges the romantic ideal of effortless connection and forces us to confront the unhealed parts of ourselves that we carry into every intimate bond. True love, in this context, is not just about finding a partner, but about the courageous journey of healing old wounds, learning to trust both ourselves and another, and finally allowing ourselves to experience the secure, unconditional connection we truly deserve, free from the echoes of the past. 11. Arguments become addictive because they spike adrenaline. Most people perceive arguments in a relationship as inherently negative, destructive forces that erode intimacy and create distance. We are taught to avoid conflict, to seek harmony, and to resolve disagreements peacefully. While healthy conflict resolution is indeed crucial for relationship longevity, there's a disturbing psychological truth that underpins many recurring, intense arguments. For some individuals and couples, the very act of arguing can become unconsciously addictive because it triggers a powerful physiological response, flooding the body with adrenaline and other stress hormones. This creates a perverse cycle where the drama and intensity of conflict, rather than its resolution, becomes the hidden reward, making it incredibly difficult to break free from patterns of destructive fighting. When we engage in a heated argument, our bodies react as if facing a physical threat. The fight or flight response is activated. Adrenaline, epinephrine, rushes through the bloodstream, increasing heart rate, blood pressure, and energy. This creates a feeling of heightened arousal and intensity. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, released to help the body respond to stress, but prolonged exposure is detrimental. Norepinephrine contributes to increased alertness and focus. For individuals who might otherwise experience their lives as mundane, emotionally flat, or lacking intensity, an argument can provide a powerful surge of energy and a temporary escape from boredom or emotional numbness. The drama, the heightened emotions, the feeling of being alive in the moment of conflict, all these can be unconsciously sought after. The argument isn't about solving a problem, it's about the physiological rush it provides. This can be particularly true for people who grew up in chaotic or high-conflict environments. If their childhood was characterized by frequent arguments, yelling, or emotional drama, their nervous system might have become accustomed to this baseline of arousal. A quiet, peaceful relationship might feel strangely unsettling or even boring, leading them to unconsciously provoke conflict to return to a state of familiar, albeit unhealthy, stimulation. The absence of conflict can feel like an absence of passion or intimacy. Consider a couple who, after a period of calm, suddenly find themselves in an explosive argument over something trivial.
In the heat of the moment, they might yell, say hurtful things, or even storm out. Afterwards, there might be a period of intense make-up sex or a feeling of profound relief, a clearing of the air. This cycle, tension, explosion, relief/reconnection, can become a powerful, albeit unhealthy pattern. The make-up phase, often involving intense intimacy or emotional vulnerability, can become the unconscious reward that reinforces the argument cycle. The brain links the high-intensity conflict with the subsequent high-intensity connection, creating an addictive loop. The disturbing implications of this adrenaline addiction are significant. Perpetuation of conflict. Arguments don't lead to resolution but become an end in themselves. The underlying issues are rarely addressed because the focus is on the emotional intensity of the fight. Erosion of trust and respect. While the adrenaline rush might feel exciting in the moment, constant conflict erodes trust, respect, and emotional safety over time. Hurtful words spoken in the heat of passion leave lasting scars. Difficulty with calm communication. Couples addicted to adrenaline-fueled arguments often struggle with calm, constructive communication. They might interpret attempts at peaceful dialogue as a lack of passion or a sign of indifference. Emotional exhaustion. While arguments provide a temporary high, the long-term effect is emotional exhaustion, anxiety, and a feeling of being constantly on edge. Misinterpretation of love. For some, the intensity of arguments is mistakenly equated with the intensity of love. They might believe that if they're not fighting passionately, they're not truly in love, confusing drama with deep connection. This addiction to the adrenaline rush of arguments is particularly insidious because it's often unconscious. Neither partner explicitly desires to fight, but they find themselves repeatedly drawn into escalating conflicts, unable to break the pattern. They might genuinely believe they are trying to resolve an issue when an unconscious part of them is seeking the physiological stimulation of the fight itself. Identifying this dynamic requires brutal honesty and self-reflection. Do arguments feel strangely exhilarating, even amidst the pain? Do you find yourself provoking conflict when things are too calm? Does the makeup after a fight feel disproportionately intense or rewarding compared to everyday intimacy? Do you struggle to communicate calmly about disagreements? Do you interpret peace as boredom or a lack of passion?
Breaking this addiction is challenging because it requires rewiring deep-seated physiological and psychological patterns. Awareness. The first step is recognizing that the adrenaline rush is part of the problem, not a sign of passion or effective communication. De-escalation techniques. Learning and practicing strategies to de-escalate arguments before they reach a fever pitch, such as taking a break, using I statements, or agreeing to disagree. Finding alternative sources of arousal. Seeking healthy ways to introduce excitement and intensity into the relationship and individual lives, e.g., shared adventures, new hobbies, exercise, creative pursuits, so that arguments are not the sole source of stimulation. Learning communication skills. Developing skills for calm, constructive conflict resolution, focusing on understanding and empathy rather than winning. Therapy. Couples therapy can be invaluable for identifying these patterns, understanding their roots, and learning healthier ways to interact and manage conflict. Individual therapy can help address underlying boredom, emotional numbness, or past trauma that contributes to the need for high arousal states. Prioritizing emotional safety. Making a conscious commitment to creating a safe emotional space in the relationship where both partners feel secure enough to express needs and disagreements without fear of explosive conflict. The disturbing psychological fact that arguments can become addictive due to adrenaline spikes reveals a dark side to human neurobiology and our relationship with intensity. It challenges the simplistic view of conflict as merely a problem to be solved, exposing it as a potential source of unconscious gratification.
Recognizing this truth is vital for any couple caught in a destructive cycle of fighting, offering a path not just to conflict resolution, but to breaking the addiction to drama and building a relationship founded on genuine peace, respect, and secure rather than chaotic connection. 12. Some people love the idea of being in love more than the partner. There's a captivating allure to the concept of love itself. It's an emotion celebrated in songs, movies, and poetry, associated with profound happiness, completion, and an escape from loneliness. For many, the idea of being in love, the societal status, the romantic gestures, the emotional highs, the feeling of being chosen and cherished can become more compelling than the messy, imperfect reality of loving an actual specific person. This is a disturbing psychological truth. Some individuals are so enamored with the idealized concept of love that they fall in love with the fantasy, the role, or the emotional experience rather than truly connecting with the unique individual standing before them. This phenomenon stems from several psychological factors. Romantic fantasies, as discussed earlier. Our cultural narratives paint love as a magical, effortless, and perpetually exciting state. For those who internalize these fantasies deeply, the pursuit of love becomes a quest for this idealized experience, rather than a journey of genuine connection with another human. Escape from loneliness, insecurity. For individuals who struggle with feelings of loneliness, inadequacy, or a lack of purpose, being in love can offer a powerful, albeit temporary, solution. It provides a sense of belonging, validation, and a feeling of being wanted. The partner becomes a vehicle for achieving these desired emotional states rather than an end in themselves. The role of being in love. Being in a relationship carries a certain social cachet. It signifies maturity, desirability, and normalcy. Some people are drawn to the role of being a partner, the identity it confers, and the social acceptance it brings, rather than the intrinsic value of the connection. Emotional intensity seeking. For those who might feel a lack of emotional intensity in their lives, the initial stages of love, limerence, provide an intoxicating rush. They become addicted to this emotional high, the butterflies, the constant thoughts, the feeling of being swept away, and mistake this physiological arousal for deep love for the specific person. When this initial intensity naturally fades, they might feel the love has died, when in fact, the idea of love, the initial rush, has simply transitioned. Avoidance of self-work. Focusing on the external pursuit of love, or the drama of a relationship, can be a powerful distraction from confronting one's own internal issues, insecurities, or personal growth needs. The idea of love becomes a comfortable shield against uncomfortable self-reflection. How does this manifest in relationships? Superficiality. The relationship might be characterized by grand gestures, public displays of affection, and declarations of undying love, but lack genuine emotional depth, vulnerability, or shared understanding. The focus is on performing the role of being in love. Idealization and devaluation. The partner is initially idealized, fit into the perfect partner mold of the fantasy. However, when their real, imperfect self emerges, they are quickly devalued, and the love seems to disappear. The person wasn't loved for who they were, but for the role they played in the fantasy. Short-lived relationships. These individuals often move quickly from one intensive relationship to another, always chasing the initial spark, or the feeling of falling in love, but unable to sustain a connection once the honeymoon phase ends and real work is required. Focus on external validation. Their happiness and sense of self-worth become entirely dependent on the relationship existing and being perceived as perfect by others. The relationship is a prop for their ego. Inability to see the partner clearly. The actual partner's needs, desires, and unique personality might be overlooked or dismissed if they don't fit the predetermined idea of a partner. The person is in love with a projection, not a reality. Fear of mundane reality. The everyday realities of a long-term relationship, the compromises, the challenges, the quiet moments, are seen as threats to the idealized fantasy, leading to dissatisfaction or a constant search for more excitement. The disturbing part is that this dynamic is incredibly painful for the partner who is genuinely invested. They might feel used, unseen, and ultimately unloved for who they truly are. They are a stand-in, a vehicle for someone else's fantasy, rather than a cherished individual. The relationship, while appearing passionate and intense, is built on a foundation of illusion, making it inherently unstable and prone to collapse when reality inevitably intrudes. Furthermore, the person who loves the idea of being in love is trapped in a perpetual cycle of dissatisfaction. They are forever chasing a fleeting feeling or an unattainable ideal, never truly experiencing the deep, resilient, and profoundly rewarding connection that comes from loving an actual, imperfect human being. They miss out on the quiet joys, the shared struggles, and the profound intimacy that blossoms from genuine mutual acceptance.
Overcoming this requires a significant shift in perspective and a commitment to self-awareness. Distinguish fantasy from reality. Consciously challenge romanticized notions of love and embrace the messiness and imperfection of real relationships. Self-reflection. Ask, am I truly attracted to this person for who they are, or to the feeling they evoke, or the role they play in my life? Cultivate self-worth. Develop an internal sense of worth and happiness that is independent of being in a relationship. Practice presence and authenticity. Learn to be fully present with a partner, to see them for who they are, flaws and all, and to appreciate the real rather than the ideal. Value depth over intensity. Recognize that sustainable love is built on trust, respect, shared values, and deep communication, not just initial emotional highs. Seek therapy. A therapist can help explore underlying insecurities, attachment patterns, and the reasons for chasing external validation through relationships. The disturbing psychological fact that some people love the idea of being in love more than the partner reveals a profound disconnect between our internal narratives and the reality of human connection. It highlights how easily we can become ensnared by our own desires for an idealized experience, missing out on the genuine, albeit imperfect, beauty of loving another person for who they truly are. True love asks us to show up, fully and authentically, for another imperfect human, not for a perfect dream. 13. Relationships often break due to unspoken resentment, not big fights. When a relationship crumbles, we often look for the dramatic catalyst, a major infidelity, an explosive fight, an irreconcilable difference. We pinpoint the big, overt conflicts as the cause of the demise. However, a profoundly disturbing psychological truth is that many relationships, even those that seem outwardly stable and relatively conflict-free, often disintegrate not because of grand battles, but due to the silent, insidious accumulation of unspoken resentment. These are the small grievances, the unaddressed hurts, the persistent feelings of unfairness that are swallowed, ignored, or minimized, slowly poisoning the well of intimacy until the connection becomes toxic and unsustainable. Resentment is a complex emotion, a bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. When it remains unspoken, it doesn't simply disappear, it festers. It's like a tiny crack in a foundation that, left unaddressed, eventually compromises the entire structure. The reasons for keeping resentment silent are varied. Fear of conflict. Many people avoid confrontation, believing that raising an issue will lead to an argument, hurt feelings, or even jeopardize the relationship. They prioritize superficial peace over genuine resolution. Belief in futility. Some believe that expressing their resentment won't change anything, or that their partner is incapable of understanding or changing. What's the point? They'll just do it again. Minimizing one's own feelings. Individuals might tell themselves that their feelings aren't valid, that they're overreacting, or that the issue is too small to bring up. This self-invalidation prevents healthy expression. Lack of communication skills. Many simply don't know how to express difficult emotions constructively, without resorting to blame or aggression. Martyrdom or self-sacrifice. Some individuals derive a perverse sense of virtue from silently enduring perceived injustices, believing it makes them a good partner.
hope it will go away. A common yet misguided belief that if an issue is ignored long enough, it will magically resolve itself. Each time a resentment is swallowed, it doesn't vanish. Instead, it gets added to a silent internal ledger. Over weeks, months, or years, this ledger grows, creating a heavy emotional burden. The person holding the resentment might become passive-aggressive, expressing their anger indirectly through sarcasm, subtle sabotage, forgetfulness, or a general lack of enthusiasm. Distant and withdrawn. Emotional intimacy becomes difficult when there's a wall of unexpressed anger. They might physically be present, but emotionally absent. Critical and judgmental. Small imperfections in the partner become magnified, serving as justification for the underlying resentment. Unmotivated to contribute. If they feel unfairly treated or unappreciated, their motivation to invest in the relationship or make an effort diminishes. Prone to explosions. The pressure of accumulated resentment can eventually lead to disproportionately angry outbursts over trivial matters, as the last straw breaks the camel's back. The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon is its stealth. Couples might appear fine on the surface. They might not have screaming matches or dramatic confrontations. Yet, beneath the veneer of calm, a toxic brew is simmering. The emotional connection slowly erodes, replaced by a quiet bitterness. The partners might still go through the motions of a relationship, sharing a home, raising children, even having sex, but the warmth, joy, and genuine intimacy are gone. They become roommates, polite acquaintances, or even adversaries, without ever having a big fight that explains the distance. When such a relationship finally ends, often with one partner feeling a sudden, explicable urge to leave, the other might be blindsided. "I don't understand," they might say. "We never fought." They fail to realize that the absence of overt conflict was not a sign of health, but a symptom of a profound communication failure. The relationship didn't die from a sudden blow, but from 1,000 tiny cuts, each inflicted by an unaddressed grievance. Examples of unspoken resentments. One partner consistently leaves chores to the other, who silently fumes, believing their partner doesn't respect their time or effort. One partner always makes decisions without consulting the other, who feels unheard and devalued, but never expresses it. One partner feels a lack of emotional support during a difficult time, but doesn't want to burden the other, leading to a feeling of loneliness within the relationship. One partner feels their sexual needs are unmet, but is too embarrassed or afraid to communicate, leading to a gradual withdrawal of intimacy. One partner feels their achievements are never celebrated, while the others are always foregrounded, leading to a quiet bitterness. To prevent unspoken resentment from destroying a relationship, proactive and courageous communication is essential. Identify your feelings. Learn to recognize when you feel hurt, angry, or unfairly treated. Don't minimize your own emotional experience. Communicate earliest often. Address issues as they arise, when they are small and manageable, rather than letting them accumulate. Use I statements to express your feelings and needs without blame. Create a safe space for dialogue. Both partners must foster an environment where difficult conversations can happen without fear of judgment, retaliation, or explosion. Practice active listening. When a partner expresses a grievance, listen to understand, not just to defend or refute. Validate their feelings, even if you don't fully agree with their perspective. Assume good intent but address impact. Assume your partner didn't intend to hurt you, but clearly articulate the impact of their actions on you. Regular check-ins. Schedule regular relationship check-ins, where both partners can discuss what's working well and what needs attention, before issues become resentments.
The disturbing psychological fact that relationships often break due to unspoken resentment, not big fights, challenges our understanding of conflict and peace. It reveals that the absence of overt drama can get a deceptive calm, masking a deepening chasm. True intimacy requires the courage to be vulnerable, to express discomfort, and to engage in the sometimes uncomfortable work of addressing grievances head-on. Only by bringing these silent resentments into the light can they be processed, understood, and ultimately released, allowing a relationship to truly thrive on a foundation of honesty and genuine connection rather than crumbling under the weight of silent animosity. 14. People use love as a way to avoid dealing with their own issues. Love, in its purest form, is meant to be a profound enhancement of life, a connection that fosters growth, joy, and mutual support. Yet, for a disturbing number of individuals, the pursuit and immersion in love become a powerful, often unconscious mechanism for avoidance. They use relationships as a convenient distraction, a psychological shield, or a temporary balm to escape confronting their own unresolved personal issues, insecurities, past traumas, or the daunting task of self-development. This isn't about finding a partner to share life with, it's about finding a partner to hide behind, leading to relationships that are ultimately unstable, codependent, and profoundly unfulfilling for both parties. This avoidance strategy stems from several psychological roots: fear of self-confrontation. Dealing with personal issues, whether it's anxiety, depression, past trauma, addiction, or deep-seated insecurity, is hard, painful work. It requires introspection, vulnerability, and often professional help. Entering a relationship can offer an immediate, albeit superficial, escape from this difficult internal labor. External validation as a crutch. For those with low self-esteem, a relationship can provide a constant source of external validation. The partner's love, attention, and presence temporarily mask the internal feelings of inadequacy, making it seem like the love has solved their problems. The savior complex. Some individuals are drawn to partners they perceive as needing fixing, allowing them to focus all their energy on someone else's problems rather than their own. This creates a sense of purpose and worth, but it's a codependent dynamic that avoids self-reflection. Distraction and busyness. A new relationship, with its initial excitement, demands, and shared activities, can fill up all available mental and emotional space, leaving no room for introspection or quiet contemplation of personal issues. Fear of loneliness. The thought of being alone, especially when grappling with internal struggles, can be terrifying. A relationship offers immediate companionship and a buffer against solitude, even if the connection isn't truly healthy. Belief in completion. The romantic fantasy that a soulmate will complete us leads some to believe that finding love will magically erase all their problems, rather than recognizing that personal growth is an individual journey. How does this manifest in relationships? Rapid relationship entry. Individuals might jump from one relationship to another or rush into commitment without taking time for self-reflection between partners. The goal is to always be coupled, to avoid being alone with their thoughts. Over-focus on the partner. They might become excessively preoccupied with their partner's life, problems, and needs, often neglecting their own friendships, hobbies, or personal goals. Their identity becomes enmeshed with the relationship. Resistance to individual growth. When a partner suggests they address a personal issue, for example, maybe you should talk to someone about your anxiety, the person might become defensive, dismissive, or accuse the partner of not being supportive. Emotional dependency. Their happiness, sense of security, and emotional regulation become entirely dependent on the relationship. Any turbulence in the relationship sends them spiraling, as it threatens their primary coping mechanism. Projecting issues. Instead of owning their own problems, they might unconsciously project them onto their partner, blaming the partner for their unhappiness or difficulties. Inability to be alone. They struggle intensely with solitude, constantly needing external stimulation or the presence of their partner to feel comfortable. The disturbing aspect is that while this strategy provides temporary relief, it ultimately sabotages both the individual's growth and the health of the relationship. The unresolved issues don't vanish, they simply fester beneath the surface, inevitably impacting the relationship in negative ways. Anxious attachment, emotional outbursts, passive aggression, codependency, or a constant need for reassurance are often symptoms of unaddressed individual problems that are being projected onto the relationship.
The partner, meanwhile, can become exhausted, confused, or resentful. They might feel like they are constantly carrying the other person, or that the relationship is perpetually in crisis because one person is using it as a therapist, a parent, or a distraction, rather than contributing as an equal, whole individual. The relationship becomes a burden rather than a source of mutual joy and support. This avoidance also prevents true intimacy. Genuine connection requires vulnerability, authenticity, and a willingness to be seen for who you truly are, flaws and all. If someone is constantly hiding behind the relationship to avoid their own issues, they are unable to bring their full, authentic self to the partnership, leading to a superficial connection that lacks depth and genuine understanding. Breaking this pattern requires a courageous commitment to self-confrontation and personal responsibility, self-awareness, acknowledging that one is using relationships as an avoidance strategy. This is often the hardest step. Embracing solitude, learning to be comfortable alone, engaging in self-reflection, and developing hobbies and interests independent of a partner. Addressing core issues, actively working on personal problems, whether through therapy, self-help, or support groups. This means facing the pain rather than running from it. Cultivating internal validation, building a strong sense of self-worth that comes from within, rather than relying solely on a partner's approval. Setting boundaries, learning to differentiate between healthy interdependence and unhealthy codependency, and establishing boundaries that protect individual autonomy and growth. Choosing consciously, entering relationships from a place of wholeness and intentionality, seeking a partner to share life with, not to fix or complete oneself. The disturbing psychological fact that people use love to avoid dealing with their own issues reveals the shadow side of our desire for connection. It highlights how easily a beautiful emotion can be twisted into a coping mechanism, ultimately leading to unfulfilling relationships and stunted personal growth. True love flourishes when two whole individuals come together, not when one tries to complete or escape themselves through the other. It demands that we first do the hard work of loving and understanding ourselves, so we can then offer genuine, authentic love to another.
15. Emotional neglect hurts more than emotional abuse. When we think of harm in relationships, our minds often jump to overt acts of emotional abuse: yelling, gaslighting, manipulation, constant criticism. These are undeniably damaging. However, there's a profoundly disturbing psychological truth that often goes unacknowledged. Emotional neglect, the absence of crucial emotional responsiveness and attunement, can inflict deeper, more insidious, and longer-lasting wounds than overt emotional abuse. Abuse is an active wound. Neglect is a gaping void, a pervasive absence that leaves a person feeling invisible, unworthy, and fundamentally alone, even within an intimate relationship. Emotional neglect is not about what a partner does to you, but what they don't do. It's a consistent pattern of failing to acknowledge, respond to, or validate a partner's emotional needs. It can manifest as lack of attunement, not noticing or responding to a partner's emotional states, e.g., sadness, excitement, fear. Dismissal of feelings, telling a partner they are too sensitive, overreacting, or that their feelings are irrational. Unresponsiveness, being emotionally unavailable, giving monosyllabic answers, or changing the subject when a partner tries to share something vulnerable. Lack of empathy, inability or unwillingness to put oneself in the partner's shoes and understand their perspective. Ignoring needs, consistently failing to meet a partner's expressed or unexpressed emotional needs, e.g., for comfort, validation, quality time. Absence of affection or appreciation, a lack of verbal or physical expressions of love, gratitude, or admiration. Silent treatment, using silence or withdrawal as a punishment or a way to avoid conflict, leaving the partner feeling abandoned and confused. Why is this often more damaging than overt abuse? Invisible wound. Emotional neglect is often harder to identify and articulate. There are no incidents to point to, no dramatic fights. It's a slow erosion, a pervasive chill.
This makes it difficult for the person experiencing it to even name what's wrong, leading to self-doubt and confusion. Internalized shame. The neglected person often internalizes the neglect, believing there's something fundamentally wrong with them that makes them unworthy of attention or love. If I were more interesting, lovable, worthy, they would notice me. Absence of a target. With abuse, there's often a clear aggressor and victim and a sense of injustice. With neglect, there's just an empty space. It's harder to feel anger or righteous indignation when there's no clear perpetrator, leading to a profound sense of loneliness and a lack of self-worth. Erosion of identity. Over time, the neglected person's sense of self can diminish. They stop expressing their needs or desires because they've learned they won't be met, becoming a shadow of their former self. Perpetual loneliness. The most profound pain of emotional neglect is the feeling of being utterly alone in the presence of another. It's a deep, existential loneliness that undermines the very purpose of an intimate relationship. Stunted emotional growth. Without a responsive emotional environment, a person's ability to process their own emotions, develop resilience, and form secure attachments can be severely hampered. Consider a child who is regularly yelled at, abuse, versus a child who is consistently ignored, whose cries are left unanswered, whose joys are unshared. While the abuse is traumatic, the neglected child learns that their very existence doesn't matter, that their emotions are irrelevant, and that they are fundamentally alone. The message of neglect is often, "You don't exist," which can be far more devastating than "You are bad." In adult relationships, a partner who is emotionally neglected might appear to have a good relationship from the outside. There's no overt fighting, no visible drama. But inside, they are slowly starving emotionally. They might try harder and harder to get a response, to be seen, only to be met with more silence or dismissal, reinforcing their sense of unworthiness. This can lead to depression, anxiety, a loss of passion, and eventually a quiet desperation. The disturbing aspect is that the neglected partner often blames themselves, believing they are too needy, too sensitive, or that their expectations are too high. The neglecting partner might be genuinely unaware of the impact of their actions, or simply lack the emotional capacity or skills to be more responsive. They might even rationalize their behavior as giving space or not being dramatic. This lack of malicious intent makes it harder to confront, and the invisible nature of the harm makes it harder to heal. Healing from emotional neglect requires naming the experience, recognizing and validating that what you are experiencing is indeed neglect and that it is harmful. Self-compassion, understanding that the neglect is not a reflection of your worth, but a failure in the relationship dynamic. Communication, clearly articulating your emotional needs to your partner, using I statements, and explaining the impact of their unresponsiveness. Setting boundaries, protecting your emotional well-being by clearly communicating what is and isn't acceptable and following through with consequences if boundaries are repeatedly violated. Seeking external support, building a strong support network outside the relationship, friends, family, therapy, to validate your experiences and meet some of your emotional needs. Therapy. Individual therapy can help process the wounds of neglect, rebuild self-esteem, and learn healthier coping mechanisms. Couples therapy can help both partners understand the dynamics of neglect and learn to be more emotionally attuned and responsive. Reevaluating the relationship. If, despite conscious effort, the neglect persists, it may be necessary to acknowledge that the relationship cannot provide the emotional nourishment you need to thrive. The disturbing psychological fact that emotional neglect hurts more than emotional abuse forces us to look beyond overt aggression and recognize the profound damage caused by absence. It highlights how our deepest wounds can come not from what is done to us, but from what is withheld, leaving us feeling unseen, unheard, and fundamentally alone in the very place we seek connection. Acknowledging this truth is crucial for both individuals in a relationship to cultivate an environment of genuine emotional responsiveness, where every person feels truly seen, valued, and connected. 16. partners often manipulate by withholding affection. Manipulation is a dark shadow that can creep into any relationship, eroding trust and creating an unhealthy power dynamic. While overt forms of manipulation, like gaslighting or coercion, are widely recognized as harmful, there's a more subtle yet equally disturbing and damaging tactic that partners often employ: manipulating by withholding affection. This isn't just about a temporary cooling off after a fight. It's a deliberate, albeit often unconscious, strategy to control a partner's behavior, punish perceived transgressions, or assert dominance by starving them of the emotional and physical warmth they crave.
Withholding affection is a potent form of emotional punishment because humans are fundamentally wired for connection and touch. Affection, whether it's a hug, a kind word, a loving glance, or physical intimacy, is a vital nutrient for a healthy relationship. When this nutrient is deliberately withdrawn, it creates a profound sense of emotional deprivation, anxiety, and a desperate drive to regain the lost connection. This manipulative tactic can manifest in various ways. The silent treatment. One partner completely shuts down emotionally and physically, refusing to speak, make eye contact, or engage in any form of affection after a disagreement or perceived offense. The silence isn't for processing, it's for punishment. Conditional affection. Affection is only offered when the other partner behaves in a desired way, agrees with the manipulator, or fulfills a demand. As soon as the partner deviates, the affection is withdrawn. Withholding physical intimacy. Sex, cuddling, or even simple touch are withheld as a form of control or punishment, leaving the other partner feeling rejected, undesirable, and emotionally starved. Emotional coldness. A general aloofness, lack of warmth, or emotional distance that is intentionally maintained to keep the other partner on edge, constantly striving for approval. Dismissal of needs. When the other partner expresses a need for affection or connection, the manipulator dismisses it, invalidates it, or makes them feel guilty for asking. The psychological impact of manipulating by withholding affection is devastating for the recipient. Anxiety and desperation. The deprived partner experiences intense anxiety, constantly trying to figure out what they did wrong to regain the affection. This creates a state of hypervigilance and emotional insecurity. Loss of self-esteem. The repeated withholding of affection can make the recipient feel unworthy, unlovable, and undesirable. They internalize the message that they are not good enough to receive unconditional love. Feeling controlled and manipulated. Over time, the recipient recognizes the pattern and feels like their emotions and behaviors are being dictated by the manipulator's whims. Erosion of trust. The relationship becomes a minefield where affection is a weapon, not a gift. Trust is shattered as the recipient learns that love can be arbitrarily withdrawn. Codependency. The deprived partner might become overly focused on pleasing the manipulator, sacrificing their own needs and boundaries in a desperate attempt to earn back affection. Emotional starvation. Prolonged withholding of affection leads to a profound sense of loneliness, isolation, and emotional emptiness, even within the relationship. The disturbing aspect is that the manipulator often doesn't view their actions as manipulation. They might rationalize it as needing space, being upset, teaching a lesson, or setting boundaries. They might genuinely believe their partner deserves the punishment. However, the intent to control or punish through the withdrawal of affection is what makes it manipulative, regardless of their self-justification. This tactic is particularly insidious because it preys on a partner's fundamental human need for connection and belonging. This behavior often stems from a manipulator's own insecurities, a desire for power, or learned unhealthy coping mechanisms from their past. They might have experienced similar withholding in their own childhood or previous relationships and are now replicating the pattern. They might lack the emotional maturity to communicate their needs or anger constructively, resorting instead to passive-aggressive control.
Breaking free from a relationship characterized by manipulation through withholding affection requires immense courage and a clear understanding of healthy relationship dynamics. Identify the pattern. Recognize that the withholding is a deliberate tactic, not just an emotional state. Validate your needs. Affirm that your need for affection and connection is valid. You are not too needy. Communicate boundaries. Clearly articulate that using affection as a weapon is unacceptable. I understand you're upset, but I need you to communicate with me, not withdraw affection as punishment. Refuse to play the game. Do not chase the manipulator or grovel for affection. This reinforces their power. Seek support. Talk to trusted friends, family, or a therapist who can validate your experience and help you strategize. Prioritize self-worth. Rebuild your self-esteem and understand that your worth is not dependent on receiving affection from someone who uses it as a tool of control. Consider the relationship's health. If the pattern persists despite communication and boundary setting, it's crucial to evaluate if the relationship can ever be truly healthy and respectful. A relationship built on manipulation is not a foundation for genuine love. The disturbing psychological fact that partners often manipulate by withholding affection reveals a cruel perversion of intimacy. It transforms the very acts meant to express love and connection into tools of control and punishment, leaving the recipient emotionally starved and disempowered. Recognizing this insidious form of manipulation is vital for preserving one's emotional well-being and for cultivating relationships where affection is a freely given expression of love, not a weapon wielded for power. The disturbing psychological fact that partners often manipulate by withholding affection reveals a cruel perversion of intimacy. It transforms the very acts meant to express love and connection into tools of control and punishment, leaving the recipient emotionally starved and disempowered. Recognizing this insidious form of manipulation is vital for preserving one's emotional well-being and for cultivating relationships where affection is a freely given expression of love, not a weapon wielded for power. The disturbing psychological fact that partners often manipulate by withholding affection reveals a cruel perversion of intimacy. It transforms the very acts meant to express love and connection into tools of control and punishment, leaving the recipient emotionally starved and disempowered. Recognizing this insidious form of manipulation is vital for preserving one's emotional well-being and for cultivating relationships where affection is a freely given expression of love, not a weapon wielded for power. Forgiveness is often hailed as a virtue, a path to healing, and a cornerstone of lasting relationships. In the context of romantic love, it takes on an almost sacred quality, seen as a testament to the depth of connection and commitment. However, there's a profoundly disturbing psychological truth. People are far more likely to forgive their romantic partners for transgressions, even severe ones, than they would forgive a friend, family member, or colleague. This tendency persists even when the forgiveness is unwarranted, enabling harmful patterns, sacrificing personal well-being, and ultimately perpetuating cycles of pain and disrespect within the relationship. Several powerful psychological mechanisms drive this disproportionate forgiveness. Deep emotional investment. We invest immense emotional energy, time, and hope into our romantic relationships. The thought of losing that investment, or having to start over, can be terrifying. Forgiveness, even when undeserved, offers a perceived path to preserving the relationship and protecting that investment. Fear of loss or abandonment. For many, a romantic partner represents security, belonging, and a buffer against loneliness. The fear of losing this essential connection, especially if there are underlying abandonment fears, can compel individuals to forgive almost anything to avoid separation. Identity enmeshment. In deep relationships, our identities can become intertwined with our partners. Their actions, good or bad, can feel like an extension of ourselves. Forgiving them, even when they've caused immense pain, can be an attempt to preserve our own sense of self and the identity we've built within the relationship.
Love as justification. The powerful feeling of love itself can be used as a rationalization for forgiveness. I love them too much to leave, or true love means forgiving everything. This distorts the meaning of love, turning it into a justification for tolerating unacceptable behavior. Hope for change. We often cling to the hope that our partner will eventually change, that this transgression is an anomaly, and that if we just forgive them one more time, they will finally realize their mistake and become the partner we deserve. This hope can be a powerful, yet often misguided, motivator for repeated forgiveness. Minimization and rationalization. To cope with the cognitive dissonance of loving someone who has hurt us, we might minimize the severity of the transgression, rationalize the partner's behavior, or even blame ourselves. Children and shared life. When children, shared finances, or a deeply intertwined life are involved, the perceived practical and emotional costs of separation can make forgiveness, however painful, seem like the lesser of two evils. Consider infidelity. While a friend who betrayed you might be cut off permanently, a cheating partner is often given a second, third, or even fourth chance. Or consider repeated emotional abuse. A boss who spoke to you disrespectfully might be reported, but a partner who consistently demeans you might be forgiven under the guise of they were stressed or they didn't mean it. The disturbing aspect of this tendency to over-forgive partners is the profound damage it inflicts. Erosion of self-respect. Repeatedly forgiving unforgivable actions erodes one's own self-respect and sense of worth. It sends a message to oneself that one's pain and boundaries are not important. Enabling harmful behavior. When there are no consistent consequences for harmful actions, the partner learns that they can get away with it. Forgiveness, in these cases, enables the continuation of destructive patterns. Loss of boundaries. The line between acceptable and unacceptable behavior blurs. What was once a clear boundary becomes negotiable, then permeable, then non-existent. Chronic pain and resentment. While forgiveness is intended to bring peace, unwarranted forgiveness often leads to suppressed pain and festering resentment, which can poison the relationship from within. Stunted growth. Neither partner truly grows. The one who harms is not held accountable, and the one who forgives does not learn to protect themselves or demand respect. Emotional exhaustion. The cycle of hurt, forgiveness, and renewed hurt is emotionally exhausting and can lead to depression, anxiety, and a feeling of being trapped. This isn't to say that forgiveness is never appropriate in a relationship. Healthy forgiveness involves genuine remorse from the offending partner, a clear understanding of the impact of their actions, a commitment to change, and the re-establishment of trust through consistent, respectful behavior. Unwarranted forgiveness, however, bypasses these crucial steps, becoming a form of self-betrayal rather than genuine healing. Breaking this cycle of over-forgiveness requires a fundamental reevaluation of what constitutes healthy love and self-respect. Define your boundaries. Clearly identify what behaviors are unacceptable and non-negotiable in a relationship. Prioritize self-worth. Understand that your well-being and self-respect are paramount. Love should not come at the cost of your dignity. Consequences, not just forgiveness. Forgiveness without consequences is enabling. There must be accountability for harmful actions. Distinguish forgiveness from reconciliation. You can forgive someone for your own peace without necessarily reconciling the relationship or allowing them to continue to harm you. Seek external perspective. Talk to trusted friends, family, or a therapist who can offer an objective view and help you assess whether the forgiveness is genuinely healthy or self-destructive. Challenge romanticized notions of forgiveness. Recognize that unconditional love does not mean unconditional tolerance of abuse or disrespect. Accept that some relationships should end. Sometimes the most loving act for oneself and even for the other person is to end a relationship that is fundamentally unhealthy or disrespectful.
The disturbing psychological fact that people forgive partners more than anyone else, even when they shouldn't, highlights the powerful, sometimes destructive grip that romantic love can have on our judgment and self-preservation instincts. It reveals how easily our desire for connection can override our need for respect and safety. True love, however, demands not blind forgiveness, but discerning judgment, clear boundaries, and an unwavering commitment to one's worth, ensuring that forgiveness is a path to genuine healing, not a gateway to continued pain. 1. Humans are wired to remember emotional injuries more vividly than others. Our memories are not perfect, objective recordings of events. They are subjective reconstructions, heavily influenced by our emotions. While we remember joyful moments and triumphs, there's a disturbing psychological truth about our memory system, particularly within the context of intimate relationships. Humans are wired to remember emotional injuries more vividly, with greater detail and intensity. This phenomenon, known as the negativity bias, means that a single hurtful word or a moment of betrayal can leave a far deeper, more lasting imprint on our psyche than countless acts of kindness, affection, or shared happiness. The negativity bias is an evolutionary adaptation. From a survival perspective, it was more crucial for our ancestors to remember threats and dangers, negative experiences, than pleasant ones. Remembering where the poisonous berries grew or where a predator lurked was more vital for survival than remembering a particularly good meal. This wiring has carried over into our modern psychological landscape, affecting how we process and recall interpersonal experiences, especially in emotionally charged relationships. In the context of romantic partnerships, this bias manifests powerfully. The Teflon of good, the Velcro of bad. Positive experiences tend to roll off us like water off Teflon, while negative experiences stick like Velcro. A compliment might be forgotten, but a criticism lingers. A symmetrical impact. It often takes many positive interactions to counteract the impact of a single negative one. Psychologist John Gottman's research suggests that for a relationship to thrive, there needs to be a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions, highlighting how heavily weighted the negative experiences are in our memory and emotional processing. Enhanced recall of detail. When recalling a hurtful argument or a moment of betrayal, individuals often remember minute details, the exact words spoken, the tone of voice, the specific setting, the physiological sensations. These memories are vivid, visceral, and easily reactivated. Rumination. Emotional injuries are more prone to rumination, where we repeatedly replay the event in our minds, analyzing it, re-experiencing the pain, and reinforcing its negative impact. This further embeds the memory and prevents healing. Impact on trust. A single act of betrayal, like infidelity or a significant lie, can shatter trust in a way that requires an immense and consistent effort to rebuild, precisely because the memory of the injury is so potent. Future relationship impact. Unresolved emotional injuries from past relationships can cast a long shadow, making individuals guarded, fearful, or hypervigilant in future connections.
The disturbing aspect is how this wiring actively works against the maintenance of long-term love. Even in healthy relationships with a preponderance of positive experiences, the occasional arguments, misunderstandings, or moments of neglect can leave disproportionately deep scars. A partner might remember a harsh word spoken in a moment of anger for years, even if that partner has been consistently loving and supportive otherwise. This makes it challenging to move past conflict, to genuinely forgive, and to fully appreciate the overall positive trajectory of a relationship. This bias also contributes to unspoken resentment, as discussed earlier. If a small hurt isn't acknowledged and repaired, its vivid memory can fester, leading to a buildup of bitterness that outweighs many positive interactions. The brain disproportionately emphasizes the negative, making it harder to see the relationship objectively. For the person who has inflicted the injury, this bias can be frustrating. They might genuinely apologize, make amends, and consistently demonstrate positive behavior, only to feel that their partner is still holding on to the past. They might not understand why one mistake seems to overshadow years of love and loyalty. This disconnect in memory and emotional processing can lead to further conflict and misunderstanding. Understanding this psychological wiring is crucial for both individuals in a relationship. Acknowledge and validate hurt. If you've hurt your partner, acknowledge the specific injury and validate their pain, even if you didn't intend it. Don't minimize their experience, because their brain is wired to remember it vividly. Proactive repair. After a conflict or hurtful event, actively engage in repair. This means sincere apologies, making amends, and demonstrating changed behavior. It takes consistent positive actions to counteract a negative memory. Practice gratitude and positive reinforcement. Make a conscious effort to notice, appreciate, and express gratitude for the positive things your partner does. This helps to create a stronger bank of positive memories to draw upon. Mindful forgiveness. For the person who has been hurt, forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about choosing to release the emotional grip of the memory. This often requires processing the pain, not just sweeping it under the rug. Therapy can be invaluable here. Focus on the present and future. While acknowledging the past, make a conscious effort to focus on the current positive aspects of the relationship and the shared future you are building. Don't keep a scorecard. Actively resist the urge to mentally tally up past grievances, as this will only reinforce the negativity bias. The disturbing psychological fact that humans are wired to remember emotional injuries more vividly highlights the immense fragility of trust and the profound impact of even seemingly minor hurts in intimate relationships. It reveals that the path to lasting love isn't just about accumulating positive experiences, but about meticulously repairing the inevitable emotional wounds, understanding that their echoes will linger far longer than the fleeting joys. Acknowledging this bias is the first step towards cultivating the empathy, patience, and diligent repair work necessary to build a relationship resilient enough to withstand the powerful grip of negative memories. 19. Most people enter relationships hoping the other person will change. The romantic ideal often includes a vision of transformation, where love inspires us to become better versions of ourselves. While healthy relationships can indeed foster personal growth, there's a profoundly disturbing psychological truth that many people carry into their romantic partnerships. They enter them, often unconsciously, with the expectation or explicit hope that the other person will fundamentally change to better suit their desires, needs, or ideals. This isn't about minor adjustments or mutual growth. It's about a deep-seated belief that they can or should mold their partner into someone different, leading to chronic disappointment, resentment, and a profound inability to truly accept their partner for who they are. This hope for change stems from several psychological factors. The potential trap. People often fall in love with a partner's potential, what they could be rather than who they are in the present. They see glimpses of traits they admire or believe their partner could develop, and then project an entire future based on that idealized potential. Unmet needs and projections. If an individual has unmet needs or desires, for example for more ambition, emotional availability, tidiness, they might choose a partner who shows even a tiny hint of those qualities, then hope to nudge them into fulfilling the full spectrum of that need. The partner becomes a project. Romantic fantasy. The belief that love conquers all, or that the right person will inspire change, is deeply ingrained in romantic narratives. This fantasy suggests that love itself is a transformative force that will magically alter a partner's core personality or habits. Control issues. For some, the desire for a partner to change is rooted in a need for control. They believe that if their partner would just fix certain aspects, the relationship and their own life would be perfect. Denial of red flags.
In the early stages of a relationship, people often overlook or minimize red flags, convincing themselves that these issues are temporary and will disappear once the relationship deepens, or once their partner realizes how much they are loved. Fear of compromise or acceptance. It's often easier to wish for a partner to change than to accept their flaws, compromise, or adapt one's own expectations. This hope for change manifests in various disturbing ways. Subtle and not so subtle nudging, constant hints, suggestions, criticisms, or even direct demands for a partner to alter their habits, personality traits, or life choices. Chronic disappointment. When the partner inevitably fails to change in the desired ways, the individual experiences ongoing disappointment, feeling let down or that their partner isn't trying hard enough. Resentment. The person hoping for change often harbors deep resentment towards their partner for not living up to their idealized vision, seeing them as stubborn, unmotivated, or unloving. Conditional love. The underlying message to the partner is, "I will truly and accept you if you change." This creates a dynamic of conditional acceptance, eroding trust and emotional safety. Endless cycle of trying to fix. The relationship becomes a perpetual project, with one partner constantly trying to fix the other, leading to exhaustion for both. Inability to see the partner clearly. The individual is so focused on the desired version of their partner that they fail to see, appreciate, or love the actual person standing before them with their unique strengths and weaknesses. Relationship instability. When the fundamental changes don't occur, the relationship often reaches a breaking point, as the initial hope gives way to disillusionment and an inability to reconcile the fantasy with reality.
The disturbing aspect is that core personality traits, deeply ingrained habits, and fundamental values are incredibly resistant to change. While people can certainly grow, evolve, and make adjustments for a relationship, expecting someone to fundamentally alter who they are is a recipe for disaster. The person being pressured to change often feels inadequate, unloved for who they are, and constantly under scrutiny. This can lead to them shutting down, becoming defensive, or even losing their sense of self in an attempt to appease their partner. Furthermore, this dynamic prevents true acceptance and unconditional love, which are cornerstones of healthy, lasting relationships. If you're constantly wishing your partner were different, you're not truly loving them. You're loving an idealized version of them that exists only in your mind. This creates a superficial connection, devoid of the deep intimacy that comes from embracing another person, flaws and all. Breaking free from the hope for change trap requires a radical shift in perspective. Acceptance. Consciously choose to accept your partner for who they are today, not for who you wish they would become tomorrow. This means embracing their quirks, flaws, and fundamental nature. Focus on your own change. Instead of trying to change your partner, focus on what you can change: your reactions, your expectations, your communication, your own personal growth. Communicate needs, not demands. Clearly articulate your needs and desires, but understand that your partner is not obligated to fulfill them if they go against their core self. Differentiate between adaptable versus core traits. Recognize what aspects of a person are genuinely open to adjustment, e.g., communication style, daily habits, versus what are fundamental personality traits or values that are unlikely to shift. Reevaluate compatibility. If a partner's core traits are fundamentally incompatible with your needs and values, and they are unwilling or unable to make necessary adjustments, it's crucial to honestly assess the long-term viability of the relationship. Challenge romantic fantasies. Deconstruct the myth that love will magically transform a partner. True love is built on reality, not potential. Seek therapy. Individual therapy can help address underlying insecurities, control issues, or attachment patterns that drive the need for a partner to change. Couples therapy can help both partners learn to communicate needs and accept each other more fully. The disturbing psychological fact that most people enter relationships hoping the other person will change reveals a profound lack of self-awareness and acceptance, both of oneself and of others.
It highlights how easily we can project our own desires and insecurities onto a partner, burdening them with the impossible task of becoming someone they are not. True love flourishes not when we try to sculpt our partner into an ideal, but when we courageously embrace and cherish the unique, imperfect, and evolving human being they already are. Breaking free from the hope for change trap requires a radical shift in perspective. Acceptance. Consciously choose to accept your partner for who they are today, not for who you wish they would become tomorrow. This means embracing their quirks, flaws, and fundamental nature. Focus on your own change. Instead of trying to change your partner, focus on what you can change: your reactions, your expectations, your communication, your own personal growth. Communicate needs, not demands. Clearly articulate your needs and desires, but understand that your partner is not obligated to fulfill them if they go against their core self. Differentiate between adaptable versus core traits. Recognize what aspects of a person are genuinely open to adjustment, e.g., communication style, daily habits, versus what are fundamental personality traits or values that are unlikely to shift. Reevaluate compatibility. If a partner's core traits are fundamentally incompatible with your needs and values, and they are unwilling or unable to make necessary adjustments, it's crucial to honestly assess the long-term viability of the relationship. Challenge romantic fantasies. Deconstruct the myth that love will magically transform a partner. True love is built on reality, not potential. Seek therapy. Individual therapy can help address underlying insecurities, control issues, or attachment patterns that drive the need for a partner to change. Couples therapy can help both partners learn to communicate needs and accept each other more fully. The disturbing psychological fact that most people enter relationships hoping the other person will change reveals a profound lack of self-awareness and acceptance, both of oneself and of others. It highlights how easily we can project our own desires and insecurities onto a partner, burdening them with the impossible task of becoming someone they are not. True love flourishes not when we try to sculpt our partner into an ideal, but when we courageously embrace and cherish the unique, imperfect, and evolving human being they already are. 20. People fall in love with potential, not reality. This final disturbing psychological fact about love encapsulates many of the preceding points, bringing us to a profound and often painful realization. For a significant number of people, the initial spark, the intense attraction, and the feeling of falling in love are not primarily directed at the reality of who a person is in the present, but rather at their perceived potential. We project an idealized future onto them, envisioning what they could be, what they might achieve, or how they might make us feel, rather than truly engaging with the messy, imperfect, and often incomplete reality of their current self. This creates a foundation built on illusion, leading to inevitable disappointment, resentment, and a perpetual chase for an unattainable dream. The potential trap is a powerful cognitive bias fueled by optimism bias, our inherent tendency to be overly optimistic about future outcomes, including the future of a relationship and a partner's growth. Confirmation bias. Once we identify a glimmer of potential, we selectively seek out and interpret information that confirms our belief in that potential, while ignoring evidence to the contrary. Romantic fantasies. The pervasive narrative that love is transformative, that a partner will grow into the person we envision, or that our love can fix them. Unmet needs. If we have deep-seated needs, e.g. for security, ambition, emotional depth, we might be drawn to someone who shows even a hint of possessing those qualities, and then project the full fulfillment of those needs onto their future self. The blank canvas effect. Sometimes, a person with less defined goals or an undeveloped personality can be seen as a blank canvas onto which we can project our desires for a partner, rather than seeing them as a complete individual with their own trajectory. Fear of imperfection, acceptance. It's often easier to fall in love with a perfect future version of someone than to accept and love their current imperfect reality. How does falling in love with potential manifest? Overlooking red flags. In the early stages, significant red flags, a lack of ambition, emotional unavailability, financial instability, problematic habits, are rationalized away with, oh, they'll change once they get serious, or they just need the right motivation. Constant disappointment. When the partner doesn't live up to the projected potential, there's a recurring cycle of disappointment. The individual feels let down, not by their partner's actions, but by their failure to embody the idealized future self. Project relationships. The relationship becomes a project, with one partner constantly motivating, guiding, or fixing the other. The focus is on what the partner should be doing, rather than appreciating what they are doing. Conditional love. The love becomes conditional on the realization of the potential. I'll truly be happy with them when they get that promotion, or our relationship will be perfect if they become more emotionally open. Frustration and resentment. The person in love with potential often feels immense frustration and resentment when their partner doesn't live up to the imagined future. They might feel their efforts to help are unappreciated, or that their partner is deliberately holding back. Lack of genuine connection. It's difficult to form a deep, authentic connection with someone when you're primarily in love with a future version of them. The real person feels unseen and unappreciated for who they are right now. Long-term unhappiness. This dynamic rarely leads to sustainable happiness. The constant chase for an idealized future prevents appreciation of the present, and the partner, feeling constantly inadequate, may eventually withdraw or leave.
The disturbing aspect of this phenomenon is its inherent self-deception and the cruel burden it places on the other person. You are not truly loving the person. You are loving a fantasy you've created. The partner, meanwhile, is implicitly tasked with fulfilling someone else's imagined future, often without even knowing it. They are loved for what they might become, not for who they are, leading to feelings of inadequacy, pressure, and a profound sense of being misunderstood. They might even try to change to meet these expectations, losing their own identity in the process, only to find that the goalposts keep shifting. This trap also prevents individuals from making healthy, realistic choices about partners. They might stay in unfulfilling relationships for years, clinging to the potential they see, rather than acknowledging the reality that the person they are with is not meeting their needs now. They sacrifice their present happiness for a future that may never materialize. Breaking free from the potential trap requires a radical commitment to reality and self-awareness. Love the present person. Make a conscious effort to see and appreciate your partner for who they are today, with all their current strengths, weaknesses, and quirks. Challenge your projections. Ask yourself, am I truly seeing this person, or am I projecting my desires onto them? Am I loving them, or the idea of what they could be? Focus on actions, not just words. Evaluate a partner based on their consistent actions and demonstrated character, not just their promises or fleeting glimpses of admirable traits. Distinguish growth from fundamental change. Understand that people can grow and evolve, but core personality traits, values, and established patterns are deeply ingrained and unlikely to undergo radical transformation. Communicate realistic expectations. If you have needs or desires, communicate them clearly, but accept that your partner may not be able or willing to fulfill them if it means fundamentally altering who they are. Cultivate self-sufficiency. Ensure your own happiness and fulfillment are not dependent on a partner changing or realizing their potential. Seek clarity, not illusion. If you find yourself constantly hoping for change, take a step back and honestly assess if the relationship as it exists now is truly meeting your needs and aligning with your values. Therapy. Individual therapy can help explore the root causes of falling for potential, such as unmet needs, attachment styles, or fear of accepting reality. The disturbing psychological fact that people fall in love with potential, not reality, exposes the fragile and often self-destructive of our romantic ideals. It reveals how easily we can construct a beautiful illusion only to find ourselves perpetually disappointed by the reality of human imperfection.
True love, in its most profound and enduring form, demands not the pursuit of an idealized future, but the courageous acceptance and deep appreciation of the imperfect, evolving, and very real person standing before us today. It means choosing to love what is, not just what might be. These 20 facts offer a stark, often uncomfortable look into the intricate and sometimes unsettling psychology of love. They challenge our romantic illusions, force us to confront our own internal landscapes, and reveal the complex interplay of our past, our fears, and our unconscious drives in shaping our most intimate connections. Understanding these disturbing truths isn't meant to diminish the beauty of love, but rather to equip us with the self-awareness and wisdom necessary to navigate its complexities, build stronger, more authentic relationships, and ultimately, love with open eyes and a clearer heart. Thank you for joining me on this introspective journey.